Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast. Coming at you from Louisiana today, and I'm extremely excited about this episode. We've already been here for a little bit, having a good time talking with Mr. Jody Meche. Jody, how are you?
I'm doing good, guys. I'm glad y'all came interview me so I could tell y'all a few hunting stories.
Dude, I'm so excited. This is going to be so much fun. Jacob, how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. I'm so excited. Jody, I was telling you when we were coming down, doing a little trip out here and interviewing some guys out of Louisiana, and our buddy Gavin highly recommended you. So we were like, we got to try to make this happen. And I was able to get on a phone call with you, talk to you for a little bit. And when I got off the phone call, actually, while we were on the phone, you were telling me some stories. I'm texting Andrew. I'm like, I'm so excited. Like, we got to get Jody on the podcast. So, Jody, appreciate you letting us come to your house and be able to sit down and really not only tell some deer stories, but, get a better understanding of how you kill some of these bucks in these swamps down here in southern Louisiana, in an area that, just based off looking at some of the aerial imagery around here, looks extremely challenging. So we're going to talk about that. So, if someone's out there listening, if you're hunting, whether you're hunting public or private land, but you're hunting a lot of swamps, I think this is going to be a really interesting episode. We're going to talk a lot about buck bedding down here as well. So I'll say this real quick to kind of kick us off, Jody. Can you give us, I want to get a lot more of your background specifically of hunting these swamps and also crawfishing down here as well.
Well, let me start off by saying my dad, he was born and raised in the Atchafalaya Basin. He actually lived on a houseboat in the Atchafalaya Basin way back when. If he'd be 100 years old today if he'd still be alive. He died at 84 years old. But they had to survive by fishing for finfish. Later on in years, they started catching crawfish when crawfish were actually marketable. You could make money with. But he hunted ducks. He hunted squirrels. Deer, he told me back then, to see a deer was like seeing a ghost because the basin was mainly an aquatic area. Before the Corps did all of its dredging and everything and piled up the high dredge ball banks, you didn't really have the terrestrial habitat that would accommodate deer like you do now. But after years, we started having a lot of deer. But my dad basically survived and raised 8 kids fishing, commercially fishing for finfish, feeding his family fish, catching crawfish, feeding his family crawfish, making a living, selling them, and hunting. We always ate wild game that came out of the Atchafalaya Basin, whether it be squirrel, rabbit, ducks, deer. That's what we ate growing up, And one time we went on a field trip at school, and my mom had pot roasted me a teal duck, and stuffed it with garlic and cooked it real tender to where the breast was almost busting open. It was so tender. And I was kind of ashamed to, all the other kids had sandwiches and stuff, and I was kind of ashamed to break out that container with, the mentality of a young kid. I wasn't even a teenager yet. And when I opened up that container with that teal duck, man, everybody wanted to trade me their bologna sandwich for my teal duck. And I said, man, my mom got up early this morning and pot roasted that duck for me to bring that with me for my lunch. You know what I mean? So you can about imagine growing up following a swamper, a wilderness man who grew up living on a floating house in the Atchafalaya Basin. I learned a lot. You know what I mean? I came across a lot of wildlife, and I learned how to get some to eat and to feed my family and also make a living from crawfishing or whatever. I fish catfish already when I was younger, but it's hard to make a living fishing catfish now. But crawfish is it's like a delicacy to the world. You know what I mean? You can still make a pretty good living catching crawfish. But yeah, I learned so much from him, and then I incorporated my own tactics, from seeing the opportunities that was out there, and I learned a lot of things on my own, trial and error, experimenting. I was able to also read articles and stuff of hunting in other regions of the country, and I kind of incorporated that in basin hunting. Basin hunting, what I grew up hunting is a pressured animal. He's trying to survive. He's trying to get away from hunting pressure. And I had to figure out where to get on these nice bucks. Because, every buck I have is considered a trophy for the basin that I have mounted. Whether it be a skull mount or a shoulder mount, it's considered a trophy for the basin. You kill a 115, 120-inch buck in the basin, you did something pretty good. It's a pressured animal. You have to figure out what that animal is doing to get away from that hunting pressure. And I usually get in places that he thinks he's safe, but Jody's up in that tree about 30, 40 feet up waiting to ambush him, coming into his bed, and he's just in a bind,
Now, at what age did you start deer hunting? Is it something you did immediately as a kid? Because I knew you grew up in the woods.
I killed my first deer at 7 years old. I took my first deer. It actually was a doe, and it was bucks only. And my brother, we hunted dogs at that time. Everybody hunted dogs. There was no such thing as steel hunting, or hunting sign, hunting rubs, hunting scrapes, hunting tracks, hunting deer droppings, hunting feed, potential feed. we stretch the line of men through the woods, and 3 or 4 or 5 guys would take the deer dogs and they turn them loose in the briar thicket or in the water and try to jump the deer, and the dogs would take off running the deer and run them through the line of men. And, and we just mow the deer down. Sometimes we'd get on them real good. Sometimes we wouldn't kill them that much. And people still hunt that way. But I killed actually my first deer at 7 years old. It was a doe, and it was bucks only. And my brother didn't want to take a chance of getting caught with the wildlife and fishery, so he actually went in the woods, and he made me feel bad, and my old man was upset about it, but he went and he buried the deer where they found it at. And that was my first kind of disappointing hunt, but later on I killed a few deer after that at a very young age. I was always following either my brother around or my dad around in the swamps. And later on, we got away from hunting dogs. I was tired of chasing these deer and pressuring these deer and everything, and I started trying to hunt them where they try to get away from the pressure, and I started becoming pretty successful, killing some good deer.
And one thing I want to kind of go back to, specifically with your dad being a commercial fisherman, and you kind of growing up that household and everything else, and kind of being entered into the woods and doing all kinds of hunting and fishing as a young kid and still today. What was it like following your dad around? Like, did you ever go crawfishing with him, catfishing with him, or anything like that specifically as a young kid? And what kind of woodsmanship skills did you learn spending time with your dad?
Yeah, exactly. When I talk to people about how I grew up and what I learned, when an animal's born or anything, they follow the mother animal or the father animal around, and they pick up what they're supposed to do to survive. You know what I'm saying? I compare that to me following my dad around. You know what I mean? My old man, he went to the 7th grade. He wasn't an extremely educated man, but he was very intelligent, as far as being a woodsman and having good common sense and good knowledge, and an unbelievable man. But he wasn't really one to teach you and tell you, this is how you do this, Jody. This is why you do this. You watch what he did and you learn from it. You follow what I'm saying? So I learned how to catch fish, how to catch crawfish, where to do it, what was the best, situations for it. Learn how to hunt. He'd always raise squirrel dogs. We'd hunt squirrels with squirrel dogs. And as a kid, I would follow him around. I had my gun. Sometimes I'd shoot. Sometimes he'd shoot, But one of us had to pull the vine. The dog would be barking, and that squirrel would be hidden up in that tree, and it's a real viney, bushy tree. And he said, Jody, you see that vine on that tree? He said, go pull that vine. So I was always the vine puller. I'd grab that vine, I'd pull on that vine, and that squirrel would take off running, and he'd shoot it, man. When that squirrel would hit the ground, the dogs would grab it, and and then the dogs were really smart. You'd shoot a squirrel, and it's like they didn't want to leave the tree. They kept barking, kept looking up at that squirrel. I said, Dad, why they still barking? He said, there's another squirrel in that tree. So sometimes it was in the next tree, and he said, go pull that vine in that tree. Boy, sure enough, there was another squirrel. That dog wasn't stupid. He knew there was more than one squirrel right there. So I grew up doing all of that with him. And he wasn't a big deer hunter as far as hunting signs, but crawfishing with him in the basin, that's how I first started learning what animals would do to get away from hunting pressure. We'd be in the boat crawfishing, and there would be these uprooted trees, and it would make a hill protruding out of 2-3 feet of water. And it was a perfect spot for an animal, a deer or whatever, to go and lay up on that hill and stay dry and stay out of the water, whether it was cold or just to get out of that water. And sometimes we'd get right on them 15 or 20 yards, and that deer would bail off of that hill, that uprooted hill of that tree. And I said, man, Dad, what that deer's doing back here as a kid? He said, he's trying to get away, he's trying to survive, trying to get away from the hunting pressure. And I said, yeah, and it kind of registered. And as I grew up in those areas, and you hunting these deer, and you're figuring out they're going in that swamp. They're going to get away from the pressure. And I started scouting, and I started getting in there before daylight early in the morning, and I was listening to the noise and all of these hunters coming into the area, and all of a sudden I start hearing these deer coming in the water. You know what I mean? And the basin is full of breaks of cypress trees. You can look at a break of cypress trees over there, and you could tell that animal you hearing going through that water. Say, if I'd be in that group of cypress trees over there, I could see that animal. So a lot of times it was a learning experience for me. It was a hunt, get up early in the morning, go set up, and I wouldn't kill, but I would learn. I said, that animal's passing over there. And sure enough, I'd go set up, and the next morning he was pressured again. Sure enough, there he'd come, and I was waiting for him. He had no clue. He thought he was getting to a safe haven. And, I was ready to ambush him when he was coming into trying to get away from the pressure, So I learned that, and I incorporated it into my hunting.
Now, also, while we're talking about, kind of focusing more on the deer hunting here, how long did it take you to figure out how those bucks were, specifically some of the bucks were using that pressure, or affected by that pressure to kind of back up into these swamps? I mean, were you pretty young, or did it take you until you're like maybe your 20s or 30s before it really started clicking?
Well, actually, when I kind of really got bitten by the bug of trying to hunt a good dominant deer was when I killed this buck over here to my right. I killed that buck at 21 years old, and we had come back from a dog hunt, and my mom always had a good dinner cooked at the camp. She was an unbelievable cook, and the guys wouldn't stay in the woods long. When we started still hunting, none of them would stay on stand long. They were too anxious to come back to the camp and eat Loretta's cooking. You know what I mean? But anyway, we had got back to the camp, and she had made a big spaghetti lunch, and everybody was eating. I think I had grabbed a bite to eat, and I said, look, I told my mom, I'm going across the river on the island. I said, I'm going to try to kill a big buck. It was peak rut, but January 13th. I said, I'm going to try to kill a buck. And I said, if I don't kill one, I won't be back before dark. She said, okay. I was 21 years old. And I left the camp, and I went, and I knew the area right there had good deer because you see the sign of them. And I sat down on the ground by a stump, and I wasn't sitting long. And I heard kind of like a grunting and some noise, and I looked, and a doe was coming. So I stood up and I got ready. I said, for a doe to be coming, a buck's probably going to be behind her. So she was coming through the woods about 35 yards, and I was watching her. I looked, sure enough, a buck was trailing her. He was chasing her. And I was ready. She passed through an opening. I was ready in that opening with my rifle, with my 30-06, and I was waiting for him to come and get in the opening, and I was going to shoot him. It looked like a respectable 8-point. And as I was watching and waiting for him to step into my opening, your peripheral vision out of the corner of my eye, I caught this big son of a gun coming. And I mean, he dwarfed the first buck. You know what I mean? And I said, wow, I forgot about the first one. I said, well, I'm going to get that one. And when he stepped in my crosshairs, I shot him, and I hit him pretty good. I think I hit him kind of forward in the shoulder. He probably would have died. He probably would have expired. But I dropped my rifle, and I was watching him, and he got in like a lane quartering away from me, and I bolted, and I caught him again quartering away like in that back rib, and ended up in his chest, and then dropped him in his tracks. And he was about 240 pounds. I mean, nice 8-point. I get choked up thinking about it because when I walked up on him, it was like, wow, you know. And about 135-inch buck, but just the massiveness of the animal. You know, 240-pound animal in the basin, you hardly ever see that. And I was so excited. My boat wasn't that far in the river, but I took off trying to drag him, you know, and bring him to my boat. I wanted to get him back to the camp, and I didn't drag him very far. I said, oh, no. I said, I know where I got a lot of help at the camp. I'm going to get some help. So I just went to my boat, and I went to the camp. I said, I need some help. The guys hadn't even finished eating lunch yet. It happened that fast. You know what I'm saying? I said, I killed a big buck. I said, and then my sister had a video camera. She said, I'm going to come. We're going to video it. And my nephew came, and they came and they helped me drag him out. My sister actually videoed us dragging the buck out. And we got to the camp, and all the hunters that hunted all morning running dog hadn't killed anything, you know what I mean? And I come back with this big, massive 8-point, and it's like I was the belle of the ball, you know what I'm saying? And my nephew Andy, when we walked up to the animal, he was down on the ground. He said, man, look at the neck on that deer. He said, looks like one of them Nort deer, he said, you know. So from that experience, I said, man, you know, I said, that's the kind of animal I want to kill. You know, I want to hunt them like that. I want to get in their habitat. I don't want to push them with a dog. And I was kind of like the one who really kicked off the steel hunting. And eventually we ended up going into steel hunting, and I started scouting and started getting on some good animals, and we all did, you know. And from that point on, I started, you know, compiling quite a few nice, respectable deer. And, you know, it's one thing about me. I trusted Christ when I was 12 years old, and I just want to put it out there. You know, I've had a lot of successes. I'm successful in a lot of things I do. But I give all glory to God. You know, I pray about everything I do, and I prayed about making those hunts. When I get up in the morning, you know, and sometimes I leave the house at 3:30 in the morning because, I'll travel by boat to go into that swamp, to get into the area where I think that buck is going. And a lot of times it's like I'm almost sure that I'm going to kill, but, you know, I ask the Lord, say, Lord, let me have a blessed hunt. You know what I'm saying? Bless me with a good hunt that I can get a good animal, or bless me with a good experience. And I've been blessed so overwhelmingly. It's been unbelievable. You know, I've had hunts that I've experienced that I couldn't have pictured it happen any prettier than what had happened. You know what? And there's so much success. You know, I can listen to other guys talk about their success, but I'm not envious or wantful of that because I've experienced so much of it for myself. You know what I'm saying? But I give all glory to God in everything I do. You know what I mean? And I mean, I could tell some of the stories that I've experienced. People that live a lifetime and never experience some of the experiences that I've experienced hunting the swamps of, in Louisiana in the Chafalai Basin, hunting these areas where these animals like to get away from the hunting pressure.
Man, there's a lot there. I want to kick it back to you getting started into still hunting. And you said that you were the one that kind of started it. Did you know anybody else that still hunted, or was everyone dog and deer back then?
Oh, yeah. Like when I decided I wanted to still hunt and I wanted to scout and find how these, study these animals, what they're doing, I read a few articles, and I subscribed to Buckmaster. I'm going to give Jackie Bushman some credit. You know what I'm saying? I subscribed to Buckmaster magazine for quite a few years. I got the subscription. And they had a lot of good stories of hunters doing things with mock scrapes, setting up 3 mock scrapes, around the perimeter of their tree, and that animal checking those mock scrapes and walking within 15, 20 yards and them successfully taking them with a bow. I read stories like that. I read, Field and Stream magazine, read a lot of good articles of hunters having successes. And then I tried to start incorporate into that hunting here in Louisiana, in the swamps of Louisiana. And there's a lot of differences. It's a pressured animal. It's not an animal like you see in some of these Midwestern states. These big bucks are just roaming around like waiting for somebody to shoot them with a rifle, and then they're bow hunting them, you know what I mean? But you could kill them pretty much at any time with a rifle. Every one of these nice bucks that I've killed, when I saw them, I killed them. You know what I mean? I didn't get to see that animal, on several different occasions, like, outings in the woods, like see him and I didn't get him. See him, I didn't. When I saw this animal, I had to take advantage of a window of opportunity to get that shot on him. And I've taken some deer with my compound bow, and I've taken quite a few with my crossbow, and I enjoy hunting with the bow. But these animals, they look up to find you in that tree. You know what I'm saying? They can unbelievably, you get down, you get upwind from them, they're gonna bust you with your scent. They're gonna smell you. They're gonna blow at you and let you know they know you're there. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna spot you in a tree. They know what those cypress trees and then the swamp looks like, because that's his bedding area. That's his home. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden you pop up in a tree where this animal's coming on a day-to-day basis, and he sees a big looking funny bump on that tree, and he's like, I can tell a story of one that I didn't get in the area where I killed that nice big 9-point right there. That animal spotted me in that tree. I was 35 feet up in that tree, and he knew it was a group of 5 cypress trees. And I caught that when I went. I said, I'm gonna climb in one of those cypress right there, because I knew his bedding area was right in that area. And I put myself where I figured he was gonna come from. I sat on the rail of my tree and I faced the tree. So I was behind the trunk of the cypress tree. And I was ready with my rifle. I heard him coming in the water, and he hit a rub line that I had scouted, I had found, and he got on that rub line. It was about 9:30 in the morning. I guess he was late chasing does or whatever, and he was coming into that swamp. He was going to his bed, which I was probably 30 yards from. And this animal was coming, and I just knew it was going to be a good buck, So I was ready. I had my rifle ready, and I was waiting. And when he got about 30, 35 yards from him, he was in what we call some Bois de Marais. It's a little dead woods in the basin. They have these little ugly looking, dead little branch looking trees. And he kept slowing down the closer he was getting to him, and he got to where he stopped. And I could see the bottom of his legs, you know what I mean? But I couldn't see his body to shoot him. He was in that those little thick, trashy trees. And he stopped. I said, that son of a gun sees me. And it wasn't long. I just never moved, man. I had my eyes squinting closed, you know what I mean? And I was just peeking at him on the side of that trunk of that cypress tree. And it wasn't long. It's like he was looking at that tree, and he said, I don't like that big bump on that tree. You know what I mean? And he turned around and he took off trotting straight back away from where he came. He walked out of my life. Now, later on, I killed some good ones in that area. I don't know if it was him, but I didn't get him that morning. But I learned from it. You know what I mean? Hunting's a learning experience. It was a successful hunt for me. It's all on what's a success for you. Sometimes I'll go hunting. I don't need to kill a trophy deer. If I want to eat a good animal, like last year, the opening of the bow season, I went on a hunt with my crossbow. I went to an area. I know it's a good travel corridor. I know it's a good area for deer to travel. And a spike. In fact, I was bleating. I bleat with my mouth. I had bought a grunt call over the years, and I would hear the deer bleat sometimes. They communicate with they neigh at each other sometimes. So I started bleating with my mouth, and I got set up in about 40 feet up in a cypress tree, and I said, let me see if I can. Early in the season, they're not as weary, they're not as pressured. After a few months of the season being closed, they're back to their normal routine. So I made a couple little bleats, meh, meh, 2 or 3, meh. Did that one time like that. I'm looking, I could kind of see some briars moving. I saw the ear flicker on that deer. I said, oh, there's one. So he was looking. It was a young spike, about some 3-inch spikes. And I either wanted a doe or a young deer, that I wanted an eating deer, That was going to be my success for that deer. I mean, the biggest buck in the area could have come out. I would have shot him, of course. But so he was looking, and it's like a game trail through those briars. He started taking a left to go away from it. So when he did that, I turned my mouth away from him, and then meh, meh. He stopped like that. And he turned, he listened, he spun around on a dime, and he came 15 yards from my tree, and I shot him through the lungs, and I watched him fall over. He ran off, and I watched him fall over 30 yards from where I shot him at, And I started climbing down the tree. I was pumped up. I had me a good deer. We still eating on him. We enjoy him every time we make a good brown onion gravy in the pot. You know what I'm saying? So it's whatever's a success for you. You know what I mean? You need an animal. You like to eat deer meat. You shoot that animal. You know what I mean? And you just might go out sometimes and you experience seeing all kind of different deer, and I don't want to shoot that one. You know what I mean? And when the right animal comes around, it was whatever success for you. You get out in the outdoors and enjoy what God bless us with.
Absolutely. One thing I'm fascinated with, and we're going to get a little bit more into this, but the swamps that you guys hunt, just to me, coming from Central Alabama pine country, I don't even know what I'm looking at out here. Right. Flat as a pancake, a lot of water. Can you describe the swamps that you guys hunt? Like, do you have like a lot of oak trees? I know it's a lot of cypress, but like, what else? What's the habitat like down here?
Like on the higher ridge areas of the swamp, where sometimes they become inundated with water, 4 to 5, 6 feet of water. But when the water gets low, those areas dry out completely, and there's a few oaks. Not a lot of oaks, but sometimes we get a few acorns we can hunt the squirrels on, and the deer will eat them too. I've hunted by some oaks. I never was successful killing a buck or a deer coming to eat the acorns, but sometimes they'll eat the acorn. But we don't have a lot of oaks that drop acorns. A lot of cypress trees or cypress bottoms. But these areas sometimes, when during the high water season, wintertime, spring into the early summer, sometimes these areas have 5, 6, 7, 8 feet of water in them. And in low water times during the early hunting season and in the hunting season and in the summer, late summer, they dry out to the point to where some areas are completely dry. So, like where I killed them, I'm looking at that 10 point on the wall right there and that big 9 point, where I killed those 2 bucks that were getting away from the pressure, trying to go bed up in the swamp. A few months earlier, there was 5, 6 feet of water right there, and I was catching crawfish 3, 4, 5 pounds to the trap in my outboard motor or with my boat that I run my gator tail on. So at a certain time of the year, different times of the year, I'm catching crawfish to make a living for my family. And when the water, when it dewaters and the water recedes out of that swamp, these animals back up into there. There's all sorts of new vegetation that grow, all kind of like aquatic type grasses. I don't know the names of all of them, but it's new, fresh vegetation. These animals love to eat that. Sometimes when it grows so thick in those bottoms, you climb up 30, 40 feet in a cypress tree, and the higher up you go in that cypress tree, I mean, you could shoot a deer at 100, 150 yards some places, On the ground you can't, but when you get up high, you find those little holes all over the place that you can shoot through. And sometimes you can just watch those deer. It's like almost like they're just grazing through all that new grass and vegetation that grows. After they dewater and it dries out, you have all kind of new swamp grasses that grow, and these animals love to eat them,
Okay.
But yeah, cypress bottoms, and it's like you have sloughs with water, sometimes lake beds with water still, but in between those sloughs and lakes, you have dry spots. So what these animals try to do is they try to cross those areas of water, and they'll go get into these ridges, or they'll find these hills where these hills will stick up out of the water, like uprooted willow trees or a tree that has fallen, and it makes like an uproot hill, and they'll go get up on that uprooted hill. I've even found places to where half like down hollowed out cypress trees, I found where the white belly hair of that deer, you could tell he climbs up on there. It's like they're wedged, and he'll climb up in that hollowed out cypress log, and he'll lay up right there for the day to get away from the pressure. You know what I mean? I found so many things that I've learned to set up to ambush that animal when he's coming from the pressure, to come either on that old hollowed out log he's going to lay up on, or those different uprooted trees that he'll go get up on those hills, or he'll just go get on that secluded ridge. It's a dry ridge in the swamp. Got to cross a slough with water, a lake with water, and he'll just going to go bed up and lay up by a cypress tree. That highest scoring buck I killed that I'm looking at right there, he was 142 and 2/8. I shot him. He was smelling at the base of a cypress tree that you could see where it was the cypress leaves were all smashed up in a perfect shape of his body, where it was his bed. You know, he would go there probably almost every morning to lay up right there for the day to get away from the pressure. And I had set up before daylight in the morning. I heard the owls hooting. I thought I'd heard the animals coming across the water, and I had just sat down comfortable, and something told me, and I turned and I looked. And he's 15 yards away. He's smelling at the base of that cypress tree. He's fixing to lay up right there for the day. And I mean, he didn't know what was fixing to hit him. You know what I mean? He thought he was fixing to go to sleep, and he went to sleep all right. He went to sleep forever. It would have been an unbelievable shot with the bow. You know what I mean? A lot of times, all of these deer, I've killed them within 35 yards of my tree, you know. And I've killed them with a rifle. Like, I've taken some with my crossbow, 2 or 3 with my bow. But these animals are so hard to get that shot on. You know, that's why I got away from compound bow hunting, and I may start again later on as I get older, you know, if I stay healthy enough, and I still go pretty good. But when that animal gets within that 20, 30, 40 yard distance of you in that tree, it's so hard to stand up, get ready, let him get his eyes behind the tree. Make sure he's not downwind from you to where he can't wind you. Make sure his eyes can't pick you up in that tree. You know what I'm saying? To finally be able to draw back and run that arrow through the baller room or through the vitals. You know what I mean? I've had so many unsuccesses on trying to do it, you know, and I hunt to eat. You know what I mean? I hunt for the enjoyment sometimes, but I fill up my freezer with what I hunt for. You know, in my freezer right now, I got squirrel, you know, I got deer, I've got frogs. You know, I'm out of ducks, which I should have ducks in there. You know, I always put me a mess of ducks up for the off season, but we live off of what I hunt for. So, you know, you should have success if you have a rifle in your hand and you got a compound bow in your hand, and you just can't close the deal with that compound bow. I like hunting with my crossbow, and I'm going to get more into my crossbow hunting. A crossbow, within 50, 60 yards, if you well practice, I mean, it's almost like lifting a rifle and pulling the trigger. You know what I mean? And I enjoy it. It's quiet. You know, you can shoot that buck. If it's either sex, you drop him, and after a while, his girlfriend coming and she's looking for him, and you can get her too. So you get a buck in the door, and the freezer's full for the year, and you can hunt just for another trophy after that. You know what I mean? So I'm going to get probably more into crossbow hunting. And I don't like the big bang. You know what I mean? I hunt secluded from a lot of people, but they hear that big shot. That bow or that crossbow, they don't hear that shot. And the animals don't hear it either. You know, you don't give off your position or let animals know somebody's in my area right there. You know what I mean? That's what's nice about the bow with the crossbow.
Yeah, I'm really curious because you keep mentioning pressure and getting away from people. What is it that most people out here hunt compared to what you hunt? Like, where does that pressure come from? Like, what are people typically focusing on?
The pressure comes from other hunters. You know, the basin has quite a few hunters that, you know, they're gonna target those animals from easy access points. You know what I mean? So what these animals do at night, you know, I'll get a lot of them right before dark. They're gonna stay on the bed till right before dark. It's like that last half hour of light. That's the key time to kill a good animal in the evening. And I'll get them in the morning sometimes to come into bed. But they stay away from the high ground areas all through the day. And as that sun starts setting in the evening, they get ready, you know, to get up off the bed, kind of shake it off or, you know, or whatever. And then they're going to head into those areas where people are putting the feed out or where the briars are or whatever. They're going to, you know, go chase for does, look for does or whatever. But they're going to lay up all day long, and they get to where they're almost strictly nocturnal. There's some of these animals, you hardly ever get to see them in the daytime. And that's why I tell you, I don't see him. Everyone I've killed, I didn't see him multiple times. When I saw him, I had to get him. Because if I wouldn't have shot him and got him when I was able to shoot him, I might have never seen him again. These animals, you don't just run across them all the time. You got to do your homework, You got to cover your scent. I cover my scent. I'll spray down with cover scent. Sometimes I'll use attractants like doe and estrus, but I try to use the bleating and the grunting more than anything, because the scent attractants have worked in the past, but I found when they smelled it, when they got to where I walked with it or where I got it hanging, it alerted them and it alarmed them. You know what I mean? And they didn't like it. You know what I mean? So I've monitored that over the years, so I kind of gotten away from the attractive scents, because they so acclimated to the environment that they're getting in, and they know they don't smell that normally. You know what I'm saying? They don't smell human scent right there, because that's why they're going right there. They're getting away from where the humans are. You know what I mean? I hear the humans coming to get me. I'm going where the humans aren't. But they don't know that I'm back there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But
there's so much here to talk about. One thing I want to get into is you mentioned multiple times about getting in and around these bedding areas where you're finding these bucks like spending a lot of their time. And because of the hunting pressure, they're just not moving a whole bunch outside of, the dark. And, they're probably moving around right in that little spot. But if you are not right there on top of them, you're probably not going to get an opportunity at a lot of these bucks. How did you start scouting for that and looking for those areas of where these bucks like to spend the most amount of their time?
Well, what I did when I started scouting for them, I would see the sign. I would see their tracks. You're going to see their rubs. You're going to see the different grasses that they're clipping. You're going to notice that, like the blades of grass, they're that certain length when they grow naturally in the environment, but you're going to see where they clip. You know what I mean? And then you're going to find, you could tell it's an animal trail. You'll find the tracks. You'll find they're dropping, but no animal. He's not there. Well, where he's going in that bottom. It's a bottom of water right there. He's getting away from the pressures. What he's doing, he's crossing that bottom right there. He's crossing that little lake, or he's crossing that slough, and then going across that next ridge and crossing that next lake and the next slough, and he's on that next ridge. You know what I'm saying? And what I do when I'm finding that sign, like where they're traveling at night, you see all their sign at night, but they're not there during the daytime, I'm figuring out where they're going. So then I'll get in there very, very carefully, but I try to figure out if I'm that buck and I'm trying to get away from the pressure, where I'm going to be. So I'll try to pinpoint where he's bedded at. A lot of times I don't go patrolling in his bed. Sometimes I'll stumble on it, and sometimes I'll jump him, but then I'll stay away for a couple of weeks, And then when I know where he's at, I'll slip in. I'll try to watch my wind. I'll get there very early before he gets there, like if I got to travel with my gator tail, or if I'm going to paddle in, or if I'm going to walk in with the waders or the hip boots. I'll get there very early, and I don't get real close to where he is to tip him off that somebody's back here. You know what I'm saying? And I set up, and here he'll come. He's coming to bed up for the day, and I outsmarted him. I got there before him, and I'm waiting to ambush him, and he messed up. He let me hear him. He showed me his signs. You know what I mean? But a lot of times you can hunt signs of a deer, and you can stay hunting it, and especially with I don't use game cameras. I put them out for my boy already, and we've had successes with them. But I don't like to hunt with a game camera, because when you see that big animals in that area, you're going to spend all your time trying to hunt that animal. You know what I mean? And you should be figuring out other ways to get him, or you should be in areas where you can get another good animal. So I'll just rather look for the signs, and I'll get them by surprise. Like this past hunting season, I went in an area. I had to go with my gator tail, and I brought my canoe. And I'd park my gator tail, and I'd get in my canoe, and I'd paddle into that area. And I paddled in, got out with my climber. I walked into an area in the water with my hip boots, and I got to where the ridge that I hunted was maybe 3 or 4 inches out of the water. You follow what I'm saying? But it's soggy. And I set up in a group of cypress trees, and right before dark, those animals started coming out the water. They were laid up on hills in the water. 2 or 3 come out right here. After a while, 3 or 4 more, you could hear them. They're coming out, and they're going to hit everybody's feed that they got out. You know what I'm saying? Or wherever the briars are, or whatever feed they're going to eat. Or if they're going looking for those, they're heading that way where those animals going to be spending the nighttime. You know what I mean? Because they're mainly nocturnal in the basin, during the hunting season when they're pressured. You'll catch them in the daytime, but they're mainly nocturnal. So after about 4 or 5 of them came out of the water in the area that I was in, I could have killed either one of them, and it was young deer and does. I heard one about 80 or 100 yards straight further south, and I heard him coming out the water real slow. I said, I hear you, you son of a gun, I hear you. So what I did, the next day when I went, I went scout where I heard him come out the water, and I found a trail. It was almost like a rutted trail, tracks in tracks. And I mean, look, a track, you could tell it was a good deer. And I found his droppings, his turds. I guess I could say it on your show. I found his turds. And old June Hotard, he was like an old uncle to me. He said, man, they got a big deer right there. He said, I found his turds. He said, well, I say he's a big deer. He said, is he a big buck or he got a big butthole? He said, one or the other. So I said, well, this is either a good buck, it's a big buck, or he got a big butthole. But on both sides of the trail, I picked me out a cypress tree that I could climb on the north side. This was last year. And I picked me out a cypress tree I could climb on the south side of the trail based upon the wind. And it was water, but ridge, and it was off into the lower part of the bottom in the water. So he was going bed up in that water somewhere. My buddy hunts similar to I hunt, and he was hunting not far from where I was hunting. I'd say maybe a mile and a half or so. He was setting up his feed, and he was catching a buck on his camera coming to his feed for the last 3 years. And he was sending me pictures of him, and he was a beautiful 9-point. And then next year he made an 8-point, and he had sent me pictures of him last year. He was a nice 9-point again, but it looked like he was going down, but you could tell it was an old buck. I said, you better hope he don't come on me in that swamp, because I said, if he comes on me, I said, I'm going to get him, But I had the pictures on my phone. He was sending it. I said, it's a nice buck. So I hunted one hunt. I saw a couple of deer, didn't see anything good, and then I went and make a morning hunt, and I set up. And I heard one coming in the water, so I got ready, but my wind wasn't good. And it was coming cautiously. I said, well, it might be him. And almost to the point that I could kind of see the ripples of the deer coming in the water, and it started slowing down and stopped. It turned around and kind of started trotting away. I said, that son of a gun smelled me. I said, God, dog, just broke daylight to where it was enough daylight to where I could have got a shot about 30 yards, made out what it was. So 10 minutes later, I'm hearing an animal coming again, the same place I heard that one coming from, but coming deliberately, like with like heading somewhere. You know what I mean? I said, I wonder if it's the same deer or what, but coming. That son of a gun's coming in that water steady like that. And when I spotted him, he had his head down, he was smelling. What it was a doe had come, probably an old slick doe. Look, them old slick does, that's like an old big buck. You know what I'm saying? They'll spot you in that tree, they're going to smell you, they're going to blow at you, they're going to like fuss at you, it's like, and they'll blow at you like to let you know, I know you right there, you son of a gun. You know what I'm saying? And it pisses me off because she's telling the whole world that somebody's in there that shouldn't be in there. So, but anyway, he come in and he's smelling. And he went around in a circle, and he came about 15 yards, and I could see like that big dagger point on his rack. I said, man, that's a good deer. And he turned another time. Boy, if I had my bow, because he didn't have a clue that he was fixing to die. You know what I'm saying? So he turned, he started going away about 20 yards. He went, like he passed behind a group of 2 or 3 cypress trees, and we came out of the other side. He was not quarter straight away, but a hard quarter. And I shot him with my rifle in that back rib, and the bullet came out of it. It came out of like his lower throat and like chest area. But he took off running. He went about 30, 35 yards. He flipped over in a little group of willow trees, belly up in the air. And I didn't realize what he was. Man, when I went over there, beautiful 9-point. I'm having him mounted. In fact, I sent you guys pictures of him in the canoe. I mean, beautiful buck, respectable buck anywhere in the country, And I drug him to the ridge. I put him by some cypress trees, took some pictures and everything. And I texted the pictures to my buddy. And I just wanted to let him know I had got a good one, because he hears me shooting at bottom sometimes. He knows I hunt in that bottom. And I said, I got him. He said, I got him. He said, that's him. I said, that's him. He said, yeah, that's him. And he sent me the picture of that buck he'd been having. It was the buck he'd been having on camera for 3 years. He'd been trying to kill him on the feed. And I killed him in that bottom in that swamp, because he's always trying to get away. That deer was 6 or 7 years old, and no doubt about it. I mean, a trophy, you know what I mean? But unbelievable hunt. I found he left me his big turds. He left me his tracks. He left me his trail. You know what I mean? And I evaluated what I needed to do, and I got him, But so many good, successful hunts. I'll tell you another story about, I'm going to grab this buck right here. I like to put him in my hands because this buck, I get choked up talking about it. This buck right here was probably one of my best experience hunts I've ever experienced. He don't look like a whole lot. You know what I'm saying? He's not real wide. He's got some really long, pretty tines. You know, he got some pretty good mass. But for the Atchafalaya Basin, the age of this animal and the size of this animal and where he was trying to get away from the pressure, trying to survive. You know what I'm saying? It was one of the most unbelievable experiences of hunting deer that I ever had. And look, I get choked up like I told y'all before. I pray about everything. You know, this hunt right here was God's answer to my hunting prayers. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I went into the swamp, and I had scouted the area. And in fact, I had killed another. You could call him a 10-point. And my son had him. We had him on his camera. We had just night pictures of him, and I killed him like he was across a slough, a ridge, a lake, and another. Let's see, a slough, ridge, lake, and he was on the ridge. You know what I mean? And the camera was where I'm telling you where he was from. But I had taken him. It was the midday. I got on stand and I killed him like at 1-something, the same area. So I scouted the area and I knew there was some good bucks, or they had a good buck in the area. So I climbed a cypress tree, and I always making an afternoon hunt. I always get set up early. You know, I'll get set up at 1:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. Always plenty early enough because deer are going to be moving. 3:30 they're going to be moving. So I want to get in there, let my scent expire, you know, dissolve, get in there quiet, you know, tiptoe in from a long distance from where I'm actually going to hunt. I do my homework and I get in there as quiet and as undetectable as possible. So I got in, I climbed up a cypress. I know I was 40 feet up in that cypress. Big break of cypress trees opening, you know what I'm saying? And there's a bottom across that ridge, but there's water on the ridge. You know, there might have been about 8 inches of water, not too far, but it was kind of dried up where I was at. And, like I tell you, that magic last half hour, about 5 o'clock, you know, about 5:30, 5:35, you're not going to be able to see anymore to be able to shoot. But I started hearing the wood ducks and the mallards cutting up, like you know, making all kind of noise, flopping and making their whistling, and the mallards was quanking, but cutting up, making a lot of noise. And I said to myself, I said, I guarantee you, because I knew that there's some hills right there where good bucks like to stay and hang out, because I seen their sign and stuff. And this was a good ways away. So I bet you that's a buck moving around over there getting off the bed. So I said, I'm going to bleat kind of loud, you know, because it was a good ways away. You know, I would say 80 yards or more, maybe closer to 100 yards. So I bleated kind of loud at it. Kind of made a little deeper grunt, like, you know what I mean? So things kind of quieted down. So let me do it again. 2-3 minutes I waited and I did it again. You know, and I'm not doing it probably as good as I do it. When I'm in the woods, I do it good. When I did it that second time, I started hearing him coming in that water. And look, coming like a freight train. You hear what I'm telling you? In 2-3 feet of water, he's on a hill, and he's coming. And he stops. So when he stopped, he's coming again. Boy, I got ready with my rifle. He stopped again. Stopped probably about 60 yards or so, and he was behind like them little blood blowings like I tell you all about. I couldn't see over there, but he's close. I said, man, he's kind of close right there. I said, I got to be careful because I'm 40 feet up in that cypress tree. So I turned my mouth this way, and it. Before I could do the second, he's coming. You know, I hear him. The branches are cracking and everything. And he's like, he exposes himself out of all that trash. And I mean, look, not running wide open, but coming, yeah. And I had my boy, he had shot a buck with his rifle and he didn't get him. I think he had missed him. So I let him have my rifle and I had his rifle, 30-06. Another time, I don't know if I could have put an arrow in him because he was coming so fast. But I had my boy's rifle and I was standing up and I was watching him coming like this, you know. Well, anyway, I got out of the screenshot. But I stood up and I'm watching him coming with my rifle and I got him in my crosshairs. I said, God dang. And I didn't want to bleat or try to, because I knew this animal where he wasn't one to mess up on, you know. So I'm following him like that. Look, I'm telling y'all, when I shot this animal, I shot him 5 feet from my tree. And I'm looking in my crosshairs, and when I shot him, I saw the red hole right on the side of the spine, you know what I mean, behind the shoulder. Boom! Boy, he turned, and he went straight away, and he went about 60 yards, and he flipped over. I said, well, that's good. He looked like, you know, he's not real wide. He's pretty tight, you know what I'm saying? And picture looking at that from 40 feet up in a cypress tree. I said, well, he's a decent buck, you know, basket rack, 8-point, you know, good. I climbed down my tree, and when I started walking on him with them long tines and everything, I said, man, no ground shrinkage here. And I mean, he was 180 pound, between 180 pound, 200 pound animal, and rut going on. He had done slimmed up a lot, but I walked up on him. I said, man, that's a good deer. And we got a jaw chart at the camp of the age of a deer. And according to his teeth, he's definitely over 6, but I'd say according to the jaw chart, he's probably about an 8-year-old buck. You know what I mean? He was in that swamp, a loner, by himself, you know, going to die of old age, on a hill with a bunch of mallards and wood ducks around him to inform him when any threat comes around him. Y'all follow what I'm saying? And I'm up 40 feet up in a cypress tree, and I bleated this son of a gun, got him to come running into his death. You know what I'm saying? So you know what kind of unbelievable hunt that was for me? I mean, there's nothing I don't think I could ever, and like I'm telling you, he's not a 200-inch buck, but I could go to Illinois, Iowa, and I could kill a 200-inch buck, and it's not going to be any more exciting than when I killed this buck here. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, over the years of me just being in that swamp, so many times, y'all, I went hunt, and I'm sitting in that cypress tree, and you hear the boats. You know, the boats will run the channel, you know. And like those guys, they hunt further south. You hear the dogs start yodeling in the pen. You know what I mean? These animals hearing the same thing I'm hearing. And all of a sudden, you start hearing that in the water. A doe and a young one will come past right there. You know what I mean? Well, after a while, another 2 or 3 does will come walking through. And after a while, you hear some noise. I wonder if that's that buck. You know, so you get ready, you start looking. And all of a sudden, you look and you see them horns, you know, on either side of that cypress tree. And he's coming. He's taking his time. But you see his ripples. He's walking. And, boy, you're getting ready to say, come on, big boy, come on. And he stops. He's fixing to get out of the water. He's getting on that dry ridge, and he don't like it. And he stops, and he's thinking, like, what are you going to do? What am I going to do right here? And he's like, what you going to do? You know, you going to come out from behind that tree or what? And then all of a sudden he said, well, I'm going to go north because his wind's blowing north. He wants to go upwind so he can smell any danger that he's fixing to get on that dry ridge. You know what I'm saying? So he'll turn, he'll go north, and when he comes out, you see that nice set of horns, and bow, and he's a nice 10-point like that. You know what I mean? And, you know, unbelievable, the anticipation. You start hearing it coming in that water in that swamp. What he got on his head? You know, it's a doe, it's a buck, or it's a pig. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's experiences that you live a lifetime. A lot of people that live a lifetime, and they'll never experience an experience like it. You know what I mean? And you feed your family with it. You have stories to tell to your kids and your grandkids. And when you tell buddies that you meet, they think you're lying. You know what I'm saying? It's so amazing. It's like it don't sound true. You know what I mean? But I got some of the proof to show that it's true. You know.
Jody, one thing I wanted to kind of get a better understanding from you is how do you see these pressured bucks specifically, but also the does? How do they use the wind and how they travel? Do you see them using the wind at all and how they travel?
Unbelievable. Like when I get into these areas sometimes, and let's say I hear that animal coming, and I didn't expect it to come from downwind, and I know, let's say it's coming kind of crosswind to me, but to me, you know, but I could tell the direction that animal's going. I said, it's going to smell me. And I'm hearing it go. And I'm telling you, like you can draw the line. As soon as he gets in line with what that little breeze you feel and it's blowing your scent over there, that son of a gun will stop. Doe or buck. Mostly the older does. The younger deer will smell you sometimes, but they're kind of stupid, you know. But that old doe and that buck that gets over 3 years old, if you let them smell you, you're not going to get them. And they'll stop. And either they'll turn and run and don't say anything, or they're going to blow, you know. I've had them stop, and it's like they want to fuss at I feel like they're fussing at me to let me know what you doing in my bedding area, son. But they'll start like, you know, it's like you could tell it's like they're pissed off. You know what I'm saying? They'll run a little ways in the water like that, and they'll stop again. You know what I mean? God, dog. So then I'll stay away for a week or 2, 3 weeks. You know what I mean? And I'll try to slip in again according to how he came in. I'll try to reset up to where my wind don't get in his nose. But let me tell you, all these animals with scent, guys. Guys, and everybody listening. I climbed up in my climber one day, and I could see my boot tracks in the soft bed of cypress leaves and those cypress bottoms. It's soggy, and I could see where my boot tracks had passed. And I don't think I had sprayed the bottom of my boots that day, but I'm up in my tree and I'm watching. I look and they got a raccoon coming from about 60, 80 yards over there. I spotted him and he's coming. He's coming through that break of cypress trees. And as he's coming, I'm watching him and I'm watching him. I said, boy, watch when that son of a gun's going to hit my trail where I walk. And I'm telling you, I watched this raccoon. Didn't make no noise or anything. And I'm up to where he can't see me. When that raccoon nose hit my boot track, look. It's almost, he froze in his tracks, and it's like his hair almost went up on his back, and he turned around, and he started like tiptoeing as fast as he could and going back the direction he came from. So what you think about that big buck when he smells where you walk? You know what I'm saying? And I don't think I have real stinky feet. You know what I'm saying? But they smell something they don't like. You know what I mean? You in their home, you in their bedroom, and they don't like to smell any kind of intruder. But a deer's nose, that's his best defense. I've had them spot me, like I told you about the one that spotted me in that tree. And, you know, they're going to notice something different looking, but they see. But the nose, and I mean, I know every hunter will say the same thing. You gotta make sure you plan your hunt to stay out of that deer's nose.
Jody, also, I want to ask specifically, taking that into consideration and like your ground scent, just you walk through the area and deer paying attention to it, but also other wildlife. How do you like to access your stand locations? Like you talked about, you know, using your gator tail on your boat, a canoe or pirogue, and then waders. Like how much do you take that in consideration of how you get to your tree and how far are you willing to walk to get back in that area they feel comfortable?
A lot of times, you know, I'll actually travel paddling or walking with my waders or my hip boots. I mean, I'll walk a quarter mile sometimes or paddle a quarter mile or more, you know, from where I'll stop my boat to get into that deer's core area where he's hanging around, where he's trying, because I know he's trying to get away from that noise and he's trying to get away from the type of pressure that I could potentially alert him to and alarm him to. So I try to cover all those bases, be as quiet as possible, make sure I try to approach from downwind and not upwind, you know, and I try to slip in there to where he has no clue that I'm coming set up on him to try and kill him. Because look, picture yourself as an animal, a big buck. Let's say I'm a big buck, you know, and you're behind a couple of deer and you're going to, I don't know, they might have some kind of feed source for you. It might be somebody's polarized brand of corn or whatever. And you're letting that doe or you're letting them younger deer go out in front of you and you're behind. And you coming out and you watching them. And all of a sudden they get over there and they cut a flip or they drop dead or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And maybe another couple of shots or they're behind and they're seeing or they're hearing all of this stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm that big buck and I don't want to get killed. What all am I going to do to try to survive? You know what I mean? That's the kind of mentality that an animal has. You know what I mean? He wants to stick around. He wants to procreate. He wants to pass on his genetics. It's built into him. God designed him to do that. And when he suspects that there's a threat, you know, that he can lose his life, you know what I'm saying? He's gonna go through extreme measures to try to get away from that threat and try to survive. You know, so I spray down. I use cover scent a lot. I spray down and I use cover scent a lot. And I don't know if I ought to give this little plug, but I like Evercalm. Evercalm is unbelievable. I've seen Evercalm work. I scratch it all over the trees in my area. I'll put it on the bottom of my boots. And I've had herds of 5, 6, 7 deer, young deer, spiked does, come and mill around and smell. And, you know, they'll get away and I'll give them a little bleat. They come back. They're looking around. They're trying to find the deer that they're smelling. You know what I mean? There's nothing like them smelling another deer, to get the, you know, the tension and the worry that they might be in some kind of a danger. Get that out of their mind, you know. But if I'm gonna shoot a buck, I don't let him mill around or smell around. You know, if he's coming, I'm gonna let him come. But as soon as I got that kill shot, you know, it could be just the neck. It might be trashy, and I catch a glimpse of his antlers. I might have been bleating or whatever. I might just be catching him slipping through the woods, going to bed. And I get ready, and I say, I should have an opening. And if I might just catch the bottom of the jaw and the neck, you know what I'm saying? If I catch his neck and he's pretty calm, I'm going to bust him in the neck right there, and I'm gonna go, and he's going to be right there where I shot him. A neck shot, if you hit him a good solid neck shot, they don't kick, they don't know what hit him, and they stay right there. I like to catch him behind the shoulder, of course. But if I could catch him a good dead center shot on that fattest part of the neck, that's a big target on a good animal. You know what I mean? I've had so many, I shot him in the neck. I shot one, it was a 7-point. He wasn't a big deer, but I had scouted and I saw his rub line and stuff, and I went and I jacked up in a cypress tree, and it was a broad thicket, and he was walking right behind that broad thicket of like a 4-wheeler trail we had. No way you'd have known he was passing right there. But I set up about 80 to 100 yards from the back of that broad thicket, and later on that morning, here comes the doe. I watched, I looked, I saw that doe. She was coming, and she'd walk, she'd stop right behind that broad thicket, the 4-wheeler trail right there when she was walking. After a while, I looked, I said, where's that buck? I said, he's got to be coming behind her. It was that time of the year, and I looked, sure enough. He had kind of like some palmated horns. I looked, I spotted him. So, boy, I got ready. About 90 yards, a long shot. That's probably the furthest shot I ever shot one and killed one. And I got ready. I had an opening right here. I said, I'm going to shoot him when he gets there. And he never materialized. He never appeared to where I could catch him in my scope. And I said, man, what happened? So all of a sudden, he had kind of ducked down and grabbed a bite of broad or something. He popped up 10, 15 yards so past that spot. So I had to kind of reset up. And I got ready, and he took a step. And I think I had kind of made a little bleat. I made a little bleat, and he stopped, and he picked up his head real tall, and that neck was stretched out. I could just see the top of the shoulder and the neck and the head coming out of the briars, About 90 yards. I took my time. I had a good rest. But, boom! He disappeared out of my scope. I went over there. He was dead right there. I mean, I center punched him in the neck. You know what I mean? But when I get the opportunity to shoot him, I shoot him. And all you bow hunters, those that hunt the swamp, I mean, you got to be very careful when you're going to try to draw back on an animal, the kind of animal I hunt. I know that. You know what I mean? I got busted so many times bow hunting. It's unbelievable. But
I want to learn more about, because you were telling me this on the phone, specifically, I think it might have been that 10-point, the one you showed earlier, that's sitting behind you, that you will backtrack a deer. Like you'll based off like hunting, scouting, where you're hearing deer come from. If you think it's a buck, you'll go and kind of check his sign. You'll kind of work your way close to where he's potentially spending more of his time around his bedding area. Can you walk us through, like, how do you try to do that, and what advice would you have to other guys trying to implement that in some of these swamp bottoms across the country?
Well, I can kind of talk about this that I found about a few deer that I hunted. Some of them I was successful in killing, and some of them I never killed. That buck, to go into that bottom where he's bedding, and then they come out and they say patrol that area at night, wherever the feed is or where the does are running around throughout the night. You're going to find a rub line, let's say to the north. You're going to find a rub line, and you're going to find his scrapes and his signs going into that bottom. You know what I'm saying? Over here. And then if you walk the edge of that bottom, you're going to end up finding the same type of sign let's say further south of that area. And what they do, they make like a big circular pattern. And I found, okay, well, I'm going to hunt right here. Well, he don't come there that day. They'll switch up on you. Like one day they're going to go into the bottom on that southern rub line they have, or that southern travel pattern that they have. And the next day they're going to do it on that northern pattern. I noticed that they'll switch up like that. But that's one advantage you have of hunting the water. When you have water in those bottoms, you hear that animal in the water, So I found myself when I first went into an area where I figured there should be deer in an area, and I get set up, and I don't see anything. I don't get to kill anything or whatever, but I'll hear that animal. I find, like in the basin, they like to use those groups of cypress trees. If you look at the horizon, in that swamp, you'll pick out those groups of cypress trees, like those cypress areas, you know what I mean? And that animal's going to do the same thing on his traveling habits, He's going to travel that swamp based upon what the tops of those cypress trees look like, you know what I mean? And I've heard him, and you could tell, like as I hear him coming in that water, that I'll spot that group of cypress trees. Then he's in that group of cypress trees, and he's in that group of cypress trees, and you find he's following that break of cypress. You know what I mean? So I'll reset up over there, make sure I try to set up downwind from him. And sure enough, when I get in that group of cypress trees that I spot and associate with the noise I hear of him traveling in that water, I end up getting in a good ambush point to kill him. And another thing they like to travel, there's numerous sloughs like in the Atchafalaya Basin. And the sloughs travel from the pilot channel to the broad thickets and the higher ground. And a lot of them travel all the way, to the they meander through the woods and they go all the way to the bottom. And there's a lot of broad thickets a lot of times along those sloughs, and they like to travel those sloughs because it's a straight shot, not maybe a meandering shot, but it's a travel corridor for them that they know how to get from that river to get to that bottom where they want to get into to get away from the pressure. And I found like backing off away from those broad thickets along those sloughs in between that bottom and that river, I catch them going in or coming out, whether I'm hunting afternoon or hunting morning. And I learn, and you'll see. You'll see where they're clipping on stuff. You'll see they're leaving a little rub here and there, you know what I mean? And then when they start rutting, you're going to start finding those scrapes. And it's not always good to a lot of times you can hunt a hot scrape. A hot scrape has produced good deer for us. I found like it was a double hot scrape one time, and I wanted my boy to kill the deer, and I set him up. He climbed up that cypress tree and nice 8-point just a few years ago. Came out to check those scrapes, and he got him. And then a couple of days later, I made a morning hunt, and it was an older deer. You could tell he was kind of on his way down. And I caught him coming in the morning, and he was coming to check those hot scrapes. You know what I mean? But it's not all. I don't think it's always good to hunt right at those scrapes. You figure where he's coming from to come there, and you try to cut him off in between. You know what I mean?
And by doing that, are you trying to find like rubs going away from there or big tracks going away from there?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Now, one thing I want to ask kind of on the scrapes, because I've heard of other guys hunting some of these swamps that struggle finding scrapes. What do you have to find in order to locate a scrape? Like, is it just on whatever little high grounds around there, or is there any kind of do you see any somewhat of a pattern of where you'll find a scrape in the swamps?
Yeah, like last year when I killed that good 9-point that I killed, I actually found some fresh scrapes on the ridge that I'm telling you that I was hunting. So that was a telltale sign that I had some good deer in the area, and I ended up killing a 7-point just a week or two later than I killed that 9. And he wasn't a great buck, but he was my last buck tag. I had enough. I was ready to finish. I was bleating and grunting, and I bleated him up. And I said, that's a pretty hunt. I'm going to take him. And I shot him, and I got him. But I found those scrapes in that cypress bottom, but it was dry. It was a ridge. But we had caught some big rain, and you had water in the deeper part of the bottom that I had paddled to access that area. And then the water started taking those scrapes. So, don't get discouraged if you hunt in places like that and you find some scrapes and like the water took them. You know what I mean? You're going to think, well, it's old. The animal's not on it anymore. No, not necessarily. He's back there in that swamp and he's leaving that sign behind. But it doesn't mean he left the area. It's just we had a big rain or the water started coming up to where it's taking his scrapes that he's making scrapes right there because he's trying to attract does or he's trying to get on some does, with those scrapes. So I killed a 9-point and a 7-point in that area, and the water had actually started taking some of the scrapes that I had found to let me know that those good deer were in that area.
Okay. All right, we got a switch out going on here. Gavin, what's up?
What's up, man?
Nothing much.
I just got a quick question.
Yep.
And I think this is going to help some hunters. So he keeps mentioning the bottoms and the sign that he's seeing. A lot of, like, even me, when I first started, I would get caught up in sign on that high ground. And a lot of what hunters do is they get caught up on that sign because that's typically where the night sign is going to be.
Right.
So for the guys who's hunting the swamps, I would say, like you mentioned the hot scrape, the only thing that really makes that a great scrape is the location, right?
Exactly.
So whenever you consider hunting the swamp and you consider those bedding areas, you would say, okay, well, these bucks are living in and around water. So finding the rubs, the tracks, the scrapes
right
in and around water and thick cover is what you're looking for versus a lot of, like, I spent years like walking high ground and wondering why I could never get on any deer,
What was bad, to kind of answer to your question, Gavin, what's bad about trying to hunt those good-looking scrapes or sign on the higher ground, most of that is happening at night. So if you're not hunting it at night, you're not going to have that encounter with the animal. So what you got to figure is well, where this animal's bedding at. You know what I'm saying? If there's a bottom there, or if there's some heavy briar thicket. I've killed them coming out of briar thickets a lot too. They'll lay up in the middle of them briars, and you climb high enough, and all of a sudden, at that right time, that animal will start working his way out of those briars. But a lot of times they in that swamp bottom, and you got to figure out how he's traveling from where I think he is to come here and make these scrapes that you're seeing on the high ground that you're hunting all the time and you never having any encounters. You know what I mean? He's coming there, but he's coming there in the dark at night. So you gotta kind of understand. Well, let me try to get closer to his bed without bumping him, because you don't want to bump him. You throw your scent in a dominant buck's nose in the Atchafalaya Basin too many times, you're going to mess up on him and you're never going to kill him. You know what I'm saying? He's going to go strictly nocturnal, and you're just going to continue to educate him, and you're never going to get him. So you got to try to figure out where he's at and get in between there, that travel corridor from where he wants to bed up, where he feels safe, to where he wants to go to find the does, find the feed, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to pitch this back at you, Gavin, actually. I'm glad that y'all switched out and you jumped on here real quick, because you hunted this morning and you jumped a buck, what you believe is a buck, out of his bed, and then you showed us some trail camera pictures of some actual bedded bucks. And that's one thing that I really wanted to get into, was the bedding area aspect, because again, out here, I don't even know where to begin with that. So, like, kind of explain, one, where is that buck bedding, and then I'm curious on like you guys kind of talking about that a little bit.
This is a good subject, because what makes that, the reason I was able to find that buck in that specific bed is because it's for a specific reason. In other words, the time of year. And that's something that I've been learning hunting in the early season. Like, usually I'm trying to hunt around water, like what he's describing. But he mentioned earlier, like early in the year, when these deer haven't been very pressured, like this spot specifically, there's some bur oaks there, and those will drop. They'll be done with by the end of the first week of the season. That's what led me to the area. But I did realize that I could potentially hunt specific beds for a specific reason. Like, there's a feed tree that's only going to be dropping for a short portion of the season, and they're not very pressured yet, right?
Okay.
But something else that you have to consider is that, like, squirrel season opened today, so I was covered in squirrel hunters, and that's something that we fight with often on the opening day of bow season. Sometimes it falls within the squirrel season, but yeah, I mean, that, like, where I hunted this morning, that's been a few years of me trying to figure out that specific spot. So it was like last season I was probably 200 or 300 yards, maybe even further away from that spot, and I saw rubs. I actually posted a video on Facebook about it. And then later on in the season, mid-December, pre-rut time frame, I went walk this area again, and I ended up bumping bucks out of the cover that I bumped them out of today. So at that point is when I realized, when I hunted it early season, I was way too far from the actual bedding cover, right? But when I saw those rubs, I got excited. But, like, that's what led me to, okay, I bumped these bucks here. Now, at the beginning of next season, I can relate that sign I saw way away from there to where I hunted this morning, making an assumption based off of bumping bucks out of that cover and just the time of year and the early season sign that I saw the previous year. So that was just layering, but it's not often that I'm finding bucks on high ground, kind of like what he said.
No.
There has to be like a specific cover type.
In unpressured times,
Yeah.
in unpressured times. Like, I scouted an area one time, and I bumped a buck out of a briar thicket, which wasn't far from the riverbank, but the season hadn't really got started yet. But I had gone scout the area earlier just to try to start figuring out what those animals were doing, because I knew it was a good spot to have some good deer. And where I jumped this deer out of later in the season, there's a bottom, right? There's like an old lake bed in that area. And I found he started traveling and making rubs and scrapes and everything more out into that bottom and on the edge of that water, So he's probably on a hill somewhere in that water, and then he'll come out at night to those places kind of like where I jumped him at. But when the pressure wasn't there, you could have caught him on the high ground. You know what I mean? Like, if I would have been hunting him on the bow season, I had a potential of catching him in the briar thicket on the higher ground. But as the squirrel hunters hit the woods and the hunters start hitting the woods, four-wheelers start moving around, bow traffic starts happening, those animals start paying attention to that, and they want to be more secluded and more away from where the potential pressure is or where it's going to come from. So you got to think about that. So where this animal's going to go to try to get away from these people who are trying to kill him, And that's how I always have that mentality in my mind, where this animal's hanging around to get away from the pressure. And that's how I find that sign to where you find him in those bottoms, and you hear him a couple of times in the water, You'll find his big turds, you know what I mean? Like I had talked about earlier, you'll find his big tracks, and then you're able to nail down setting yourself up in a spot where he's going to be traveling to go to or from where he's going to or from.
I'm curious about the water specifically, because you've talked about them coming through the water quite a bit, and that is something that we've heard from other swamp hunters in Georgia or Alabama or Mississippi. I'm curious, how deep is too deep for them? I mean, do they just not care if they have to swim, or are they looking for something where maybe it's knee deep to a deer or anything like that?
I've run across them at times to where they actually had to swim, to where his head sticking out of the water was too deep for him to actually walk, and they had to swim. And they're gonna do whatever they feel they need to do to get away from the pressure, whether it's a pack of dogs running him, or somebody that they picked up their scent. You know what I mean? And you picked up their scent right in his core area. They will swim if they have to. They won't swim for real long distances. But I've seen them swim the Whiskey Bay Pilot Channel, which is it's 1,000 foot wide and 100 feet deep. We've encountered bucks swimming that river and does. They'll swim for certain reasons. Pack of coyotes might get on him, and he's tired of running from that pack of coyotes, so he'll hit that river and he'll swim that river.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
Well, I wanted to make one more point about the bedding, because I'm curious to see what Mr. Jody's thoughts is on it.
Yeah.
But I've had people message me or even tell me to my face, because I'll get in the beds at times, and they'll be like, "Man, you totally messing up." And they say that, but at the same time, with the GPS studies, with the MSU and everything, they say the bucks aren't using that specific bed very often, right? Mm-hmm. So it's if you believe that those bucks aren't using those beds very often, then it shouldn't be me. I shouldn't be messing up the scenario if I get in the bed, right? So what I will do is whenever
that's an interesting perspective.
Right.
I like that.
So what I will do is whenever I find the bed, I will go to it and I will get in it and look at the hair in the bed, right? But from that point, it's you developing the intuition you need.
Oh, yeah.
So now when I'm walking into an area and I'm seeing the sign that I want to see, I can relate that sign to the preferred bedding, because I've seen it. I've gotten in the bed before, right? What I was hunting today was in some, I don't want to say what I was hunting today. But what I was hunting today was when you're on the ground, it's taller than your head. Right. But when you're in the tree, you can see good in it.
Exactly.
So because I get in those beds, now I can relate the sign that I'm seeing to what I believe is the preferred bedding in the area, which I feel has been helping me. That's what led me to being on those bucks today.
What it allows you to do is when you find that buck's bedding area, it allows you to become tactical, to figure out what is he doing to get to here, where he's coming from. Why is he coming from over there? Then you can kind of start investigating off of where you located that bed. And whether you in a reserve or a public area, wherever the area is you hunting, if you need a GPS that side or whatever, drop a pin, and off of that you figure out. You start figuring out where he's traveling from, where he's coming from, where he's moving to from there and from to there, and it allows you to set up and intercept him going to and from that bed.
Mr. Jody, what about when the water starts coming up? How does it change the bedding? Because we have a lot of fluctuating.
Yeah, I don't think an animal likes to lay up in the water. He's either gonna find him a leaning tree he can climb up on, a hill, When water starts coming up in an area, he's going to maybe relocate. I don't think he's going to relocate a very long distance from where he's hanging around at and where he feels safe. But he's going to find him a spot to where he doesn't have to stay in the water. I've seen him, stand up in the water and stay still for a long time when I encounter him. You know what I mean? But a white-tailed deer is not an animal that just likes to lay down in the water. They like to be dry. They like to buckle up their legs underneath their body to keep their legs doesn't have much, meat on them to keep them warm during cold weather. But they don't like to lay down in the water, but they'll get on that hill, dry off and stay dry on that hill, and they'll stay there all day long. As long as they don't get pressured off that hill, they're going to stay on that hill until they're ready to come off of it.
But now, how does that change? By the way, guys, Jake is back. Appreciate it, Gavin. How does that change if you have any kind of flood stages happening during season? How much are the deer going to shift, and how do you shift with those deer when that water starts coming up?
Most of the guys I know, as well as myself, we hate to have a real high water season during the peak of the hunting season, especially the rut, because what it does, the water gets so deep in those bottoms, you end up getting 4 or 5 feet of water where this animal can move around when it's dry, during normal low water conditions, and it forces them out into the pressure. You follow what I'm saying? So it allows a lot of them to get killed a lot more easily. We rather the water stay lower so they have those areas to retreat to get away from the hunting pressure. Then the water come up. It'll push them out of their core areas they like to be to get away from the pressure, and it's going to push them into more dangerous areas where they're going to potentially get killed.
Now, how do you handle that situation in the past if you've ever had those kind of seasons? Do you change your perspective completely when that happens? How do you handle that?
No, it's just you try to be a heck of a lot more top secret getting into the area that you're hunting, because it's a lot easier for someone who is not as good of a hunter and as good as hunting signs and figuring out what the animal is doing to go into that area and kill that good animal you're trying to kill. So you try to be a lot more quiet, talk to people, let them know what you're doing. If I'm not working during the hunting season, I'm going to hunt during the week, to where on the weekend somebody's not going to pass and see my boat, or they're not going to see where I'm traveling to or traveling from. You know what I mean? I try to avoid the areas where potentially, there's going to be more pressure that they're going to stumble on what I'm on. You know what I mean? But when the water's low, it's a lot harder to get to those areas. So you don't have as much pressure that or competition you have to deal with. You know what I mean? But as that water comes up, it's just so few areas that animal has refuge on. You know what I mean? And it's a lot easier for the other hunters to be able to get to them.
Now, this is something I've heard from other guys, specifically in Alabama, that hunt some river bottom public land, is dealing with duck hunting pressure. And I've heard this in other areas. What's your thought on duck hunters and duck hunting pressure for you when it comes to deer hunting?
We've had so many different times, myself and like my brother and a buddy of his were in the duck blind. They had built them a duck blind in one of these bottoms that I hunt, okay? And they were hunting ducks, and they could hear that walking in the water. The water was on the ridge, you know what I'm saying? And they'd bring the rifle, because they knew that potentially they could shoot a deer. Bill, he was my brother's son-in-law. He and my niece split up. But anyway, he said, "You hear that deer?" He said, "Yeah." That's why he grabbed the rifle. You know what I mean? And Steven has the rifle, my brother, and he's real short. He's not much taller than 5 foot, probably 5'2", 5'4", I don't know. He's pretty short. And Bill's pretty tall. Bill's probably 6'1", 6'2". And Steven said, He said, I can't get a shot on him. You know what I mean? He couldn't see out of the blind good enough. This animal was walking on the ridge in the shallow water, and he got horns. Bill said, "Give me the rifle." He said, "I can see him good right here." So they're in the blind playing musical guns. You know what I'm saying? I can't shoot him. You shoot him. They're hunting ducks, calling with the calls, with the duck calls, quacking at ducks. You know what I'm saying? Feed calling ducks, shooting ducks. Then here comes this buck on the ridge. He's going to try to get away from the pressure. You know what I'm saying? And Bill takes the rifle, and he shoots him in the neck, and they kill him. They got their limited ducks and a nice 8-point buck. I hunted with my boy one time, and we were hunting ducks. And could hear that deer coming in the water. And he couldn't shoot it, you know what I'm saying? But, I mean, I needed some deer meat, and it was either sex, and it was a doe. And we were shooting mallards, almost like a little ponded area on this ridge, and it's kind of dry, 6-8 inches of water, and I hear this deer coming in the water. And we had just shot ducks not that long ago, and I'm calling and I'm quanking and stuff, and I hear that coming. I put some buckshot. I mean, deer past 20, 30 yards from her. I shot her in the neck and I killed her. We kill our limited ducks and we kill a doe, So at times, yeah, it'll scare animals, but I think they hear duck hunters hunting so much, and they're in that stationary area, and they hear the calling, they hear the shooting, they know it's something that it's not a threat to them, so they don't mind going into that area, So we've killed deer and bucks actually on duck hunts, because I hunt ducks all the time, So yeah, that's a myth. You know what I mean? But it's a myth, yet get in that animal's core area and try to kill him. You know what I mean? You'd never think he would be stupid enough to come where you calling ducks and shooting ducks. You know what I mean? But they prove you wrong. So I don't know. Sometimes they're so intelligent, and you feel like, man, there's no way I can get that deer. And sometimes they screw up, and they're so stupid. It's like, golly, you couldn't have been more stupid than what you did right there, boy. You know what I mean? You disappointed me.
That's the kind of deer I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, yeah. The stupid ones are the better ones.
Yeah, I need the stupid ones, especially if I was going to come hunt down here.
So one thing you just mentioned, and I want to make sure I heard this correct and the listeners heard this correct. You were talking about that duck hunt, that ridge when you shot the doe. The ridge was kind of dry, had 6 to 8 inches of water.
Yeah,
that's kind of dry.
That's dry for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
So I just want to clarify
the bottom had 3-4 feet of water in it. You know what I mean?
And the ridge had 6 to 8 inches, but
Yeah.
the deer still running it.
Oh yeah, that's prime. That's prime hunting territory. The type of areas I hunt, 6-8 inches of water on the ridge. That's just right.
So that makes me want to ask you then, how does that affect you reading sign on those ridges when there's a little bit of water on them?
The water gets muddied when the animals are passing. When you're traveling it readily, you're gonna find that you're gonna find that discolored clear water. You know what I mean? And you're gonna start spotting those tracks. You're gonna spot those tracks in that. There's still like some muddiness in the tracks. You know what I mean? When they walking through the water, they leave bubbles a lot of time. Like let's say you shoot that animal and you don't kill him, you don't drop him in his tracks. A lot of times you're not gonna find blood because he's in the water. So you track him, you see the splashing on the cypress knees, and they leave bubbles. It's like right there, it's just a slick of clear water. And right there, you see like a trail of bubbles. That animal passed right there. You follow him on his bubbles. You know what I mean? A lot of times I'm walking like that, and I'll spot those bubbles. And then when I get there, you can still see the faded, muddy tracks of the deer that had passed right there. So you learn to find, the signs that they leave behind. Yeah.
Do you find them making rubs in that water?
Oh, yeah, you find the rubs, too. I found a lot of little cypress trees to where they're like that golden orange yellow. You know what I mean? You be walking, taking your time, walking quiet in that water because, you don't just come crashing through the water. That animal's on a hill 100 yards away from you. He's going to hear you. What the hell is that, a buffalo? You know what I'm saying? What's coming at me? You know what I mean? So you're taking your time, and all of a sudden you're going to look over there and you're going to see a cypress about 2-3 inches, 3-4 inches in diameter, and that sucker's skin up. You know what I mean? It's bright orange, yellow. You find those rubs in the water a lot. Yeah. Sometimes these animals, they stay in the water. They don't come out of the water.
That's what I was going to say. If you look back at a lot of the deer you've killed the last, say, 10, 15, 20 years, bucks specifically, were pretty much the commonality with all of them were most of them wet or had like their underside wet or something like that where you could tell they'd been in that water?
A lot of them, they stay in the water so much, their hooves are like deteriorated away, and they're cracked up. You know what I'm saying? Like they're discolored, they're more white on the tips, and like you feel sorry for that poor animal because he's in the water so much to where his hooves can't stay dry enough to where they're in good healthy condition. You know what I mean? But that's how much they'll stay in the water. One time, my buddy, I'll tell you another little story. I don't know how, and it wasn't a respectable 8-point, but this was on the island across the river from where our camp was, and his cousin. He really good hunter. He hunts lock-ons high up in the tree. He likes to smoke, but he gets so high up, the animals don't smell his smoke. And he said, I like to just sit up there and watch them animals. When he sees one he wants to shoot, he'll shoot it. But anyway, he's a good hunter. And his dad had some oil wells on that island that they would gauge and they would check. And when they would ride around checking these wells, they started noticing the track of a deer. And it looked like a buck track. A buck's going to sink pretty good, and he makes those... what are they called?
Claws.
Yeah, the dew claws, Well, one of those buck tracks they were seeing had a crooked like toe. You know what I mean? And he and Brian were talking about that crooked toe. This is that son of a gun's always in the road. Always, like it would rain, they would see that crooked-toed buck track. So it's the same place where I killed that big 8 and then that big 7. That one was about 240 pounds. That big 7 that I have at our camp was about 232 pounds. It was the same area. So I went into that area and I hunted, and I set me up 3 mock scrapes. I put one over here, I put one over here, and I put one over here, and I put like a tarsal gland in one and like just a scent dripper, in the other 2, and I put some strong dominant buck urine. I used to use the Tinks I watched Ben Lee a lot. I like Ben Lee. But anyway, I had set up some tinks and I climbed. And I bleated and I grunted a little bit. And apparently that deer was downwind of those mock scrapes that I made. And man, here he comes. So boy, he was going from one mock scrape to the other, and I shot him and I killed him. I walked over there and I looked at his foot. I noted his foot right away. He had that crooked hoof. You know what I mean? So I got back to the camp. My buddy was at the camp. I said, "Look, you crooked hoof deer you've been looking at." He said, "You son of a gun." He said, "It's like they were intrigued, but they wanted to kill that deer." Well, I killed him for him. So yeah, I put the 3 mock scrape on him. He couldn't take it. I got him.
One thing you've talked about calling a bunch in this episode, but we've never really dove very deep on the conversation. How do you like to implement bleeding and grunting? And then will you do it while you're talking about how you implement it, like when you do it? Will you do it when you don't have any deer around you and you just blind call? How do you work around calling and building success calling?
I do it differently throughout. Like when I'm pretty sure the bucks are rutting and they're looking for does, I'll try to use both. You know, meh, meh, and then I'll go meh, meh. 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 You know what I mean? It's kind of like a doe and a buck kind of interacting. You know what I mean? And sometimes I'll just do meh. 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 But I'm always watching. I'm always looking. You know, nothing. You can't do it when they're close by. What the hell that deer's doing 40 feet up in that tree? You know what I'm saying? You got to pay attention and make sure they're not around. But look, if they're in a distance and they hear that, I've had them come running. Like I said, they come running to their death. You know what I mean? It's like they coming looking for that doe. They coming looking for that buck that's in that core area. You know what I mean? So during the rut, I'll mix it up. But a lot of times I'll just do the bleating. Like early season, little neighing and bleating like meh, 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 meh. You know what I mean? Just 2 or 3 little times I'll stop. I'll wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. Look around, nothing going on. I'll do it again. A lot of times I'll do it in the blind. When you make eye contact with that deer, you got to be very careful when you start making vocalizations because they pinpoint those sounds and where, especially a dominant buck. You know what I mean? If he pinpoints that noise that's coming out of that tree, he's not coming check it out. You know what I mean? So I'll do it in the blind. Not seeing anything, thinking they're in that briar thicket over there, or they're in the water on a hill. You know what I mean? Like that big 10. You know, he was on that hill, and he was probably getting ready to come out of that bottom to go do whatever he was going to do during the night, wherever he was planning on going. And I think he really wanted to go opposite the direction that I called him to. But when he heard that there was a doe on that ridge, he said, "I'm going to get me some of that." You know what I mean? And it was the wrong thing he wanted to get, you know.
He got some hot lead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious about the doe bleat, especially because we don't run into a ton of guys who use a doe bleat successfully. And one thing I'm really curious about this. You know, there's those Primos can calls. You know, the classic.
I was just thinking about it. I had bought one, and that's why I started doing all of the bleating because it was effective when we used to use it.
So I'm curious if you've ever heard this. Some of those calls, like especially that can call, some of them they'll be a little bit different, but some of them it's like a real long, drawn out bleat, and you're doing a really short one. Do you notice a big difference between a drawn out bleat versus that?
Yeah, I've heard a doe and a young one like communicate, and it's like, meh, you know, just meh, you know, and that young one, meh, meh, and then that doe, meh, meh. Kind of like that. Just a little short. It's like little communication they make. Early season, you hear that a lot. You know what I mean? When they're not real pressured or whatever. I've heard them make the noises. You know what I'm saying? That's why I do it. That's why I've implemented it into my hunting, because if they think there's other deer in the area, they're curious. They're communal. You know, they might think it's their cousin or their brother or their sister. You know what I'm saying? They want to come and be around that other animal. It's another set of eyes. It's another nose. It's another set of ears, you know, that they can rely on their senses as well as their own senses, you know. So they want to be together. But, yeah, there's no doubt. I've had numerous times it's obvious. If I wouldn't have bleated or grunted, I wouldn't have killed the animal that I killed, you know. But I don't do it all the time. You know, a lot of times I'm in a good core area of a good deer. I'm just gonna climb up in that tree and I'm gonna be quiet and I'm gonna watch and just wait for him to potentially come across there or come through that area, because I'm pretty sure I'm in his travel corridor area, his core area where he is, and I don't want to trigger him or tip him off that I'm in that area. So I won't do it at all. But a lot of times I feel like if it's going to potentially work, I'll try it. And I mean, it's amazing how well it works, you know.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever rattle?
I have in the past, and it's been effective. My son did it last year toward the end of the season. He had taken a decent 8-point, and he went back later in the season, and he said, Daddy, it had signs all over the place. It had rubs and scrapes. He said, man, it's like, he said, looked like the bucks were going crazy. So he said, he had told me he wanted to try to rattle. And he went to make an afternoon hunt. I don't know about what time he left. It might have been 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I had gone somewhere, and I was coming around in the back road back there, and it turned to come to my house from the back road. And when I got to the road to turn, and I looked, there's several people outside, and it's his truck and my boat. I said, man, he's back already. I didn't notice, you know. I pulled up right there. He had already killed an 8-point. It wasn't a huge buck, but it was a nice buck. But all of his points were broken. You know what I mean? He was scarred up and gashed up. He had some scars. It looked like a rope had almost tied on his neck, and it was like a red gash. He had a good buck in that area, was tearing him up. But he said, Daddy, he said, I climbed up and he tied a set of antlers, you know, that we've gotten accumulated over the years, but he tied them to a rope and he left them on the ground. He said, Daddy, I climbed up. He said, it wasn't long. He said, I bleated and I grunted a couple little bleats and grunts. He said, I started shaking them antlers on the ground with that rope. He said, that son of a gun was in the water, and it's like it went off into a bottom, and he was like coming out of that bottom up onto the dry ground, and like kind of like a hill that had sanded up with a lot of briars, and he was set up because that's where all the sign was, but that deer was in the water over there. He said when he bleated and grunted, he started shaking and rattling them horns on the ground, and it's like was hitting that leaves and like thumping on the ground. He said that son of a gun come running out the water. He said his hair was all bristled up. He said he came and he stopped. He said about 30 yards, and he said he snort wheezed. He said there was no way, he said, I could pass him up. He said, I'm shooting that one. It was such an awesome hunt. You know, it's, like I say, to every hunter, whatever's a successful hunt to you, you know what I'm saying? If you enjoying that experience and you want to, you know, finish it off by shooting that animal, hey, shoot that animal. It's something you're going to have with you for the rest of your life. Like that hunt right there, it wasn't the best buck he had ever shot, but the whole experience of how it happened. You know, he rattled horns. This animal was laid up on a hill in the water and come running, all bristled up, ready to fight. Snort wheeze, said his eyes looked like they were red. That is like he was mad. He was pissed off. But then some buck been busting his behind. You know what I'm saying? He was ready for a fight because he had got his butt whipped a few times. And instead of getting his butt whipped, he got a bullet. But that's something that he's going to have with him for the rest of his life. I've never experienced a hunt like that. You know, a buck coming running and start wheezing and all bristled up. And he did it by rattling, you know. It's got to be at the right times of the year, you know. When they're really hot and rut and they're fighting and does are, you know, you got a hot doe or two in the area. And, you know, they're trying to, which one wants to breed them does, you know. The dominant buck wants to breed the does. You know, it just depends on the scenario and the time of the year it is. What's going to work, you know. A lot of times you're going to mess up. But a lot of times it's going to work.
So calling and like rattling, again, like your boy being able to go out there and do that is super interesting. That's something I started having a little more success with last year. And one thing I've thought of, especially if you're climbing in and around some of that water on, you know, these ridge tops have 6, 8, 10 inches of water on them, how easy you could add ground noise just by doing the antlers like that, and where you can rattle them, but you can still make that water sloshing sound. Ooh. Because I can imagine if a buck's hearing the rattling, the grunting, the bleating, and then he hears something walking around the water, kicking around the water, I feel like he would have to come and check that out.
Funny you should bring that up. My oldest boy was about 10 or 12 years old. And there's a little bayou that we travel a lot with our boats. And it makes like a pretty good, decent ridge right on the bayou. But it drops off into a bottom ridge. It's a ridge, but it's a bottom. It makes a bottom like in that ridge. And I went and I scouted that area. I brought him. He was with me. And found some rubs and everything, and you could tell there was hills in the water, 6, 8 inches of water off that ridge of that little bayou in that bottom. And I kind of looked at it. I checked it out. I had just stumbled in right there, checking it out, going to hunt. And I strapped my climber on the tree. I got it up to where he could get in comfortably. And I said, climb up about 15 feet. So I let him climb up about 15 feet up in the tree. He would have needed to be about 25 or 30 feet to really be able to get a good shot, and young. He was 10 or 12 years old. So they had a hill over here. And I went toward that hill and I looked. They had it was a big tree. I don't remember what kind it was. I think it was one of what we call a big cottonwood tree. And it kind of like had a hill dry all around that cottonwood. And you could see where there was about 3 or 4 body spots, smash spots of where them animals were laying around that tree. And it had a perfect little hill. I had my little seat, my little fold out hunting seat with me. So I sat on that hill, and it was perfect to where I had about 6 or 8 inches of water. I had my hip boots on that I could kick around and splash in that water. And I'm looking at my son. He can see me. He's 25, 30 yards over there away from me. And I said, I'm going to set up right here. And I said, I'm going to imitate some deer in the water with that hill and everything. So I did exactly what you just asked me about. I started off bleating and grunting a little bit, and I started kicking and sloshing in that water. I even got up and I was like tromping around in the water, making it sound like some deer were running around and chasing. And I'm telling you, Jacob, it wasn't 15 minutes that I started doing that. I don't think it was that long. I started hearing that animal coming in that water. And I mean, look, coming on a string. You know what I'm saying? He was coming. And he came through, and I wanted him to go on my boy. And I ended up getting, I hate that it happened, but I ended up not getting that animal. But I wanted him to go with my boy. But he came through them little tight trash of trees, and he was coming straight on me. So I got ready with my rifle, and I'm looking at my boy. And but before that happened, the deer were coming out of the water, and they were running all around him in the water, chasing and running. And I knew it had to be a buck, but I didn't get him high enough to see. And I was looking. I said, look behind you. I could hear him running behind him in the water. And he was like a young boy, and I had him with a 20-gauge shotgun with a slug. You know what I'm saying? It was gun season. And I said, man, if I could be in that tree, I know it's got to be a good deer, because it sounded like a good buck chasing some does. But then I hear this other animal coming, so I get ready because he's going to come right to me. You know what I mean? So I'm ready, and I'm set up, and I'm looking. Then all of a sudden, I'm seeing him in my crosshairs. And when he come and he made out what I was, like, oh, crap. You know what I'm saying? I done messed up now. And I'm looking at my boy out the corner of my eye. He's looking at those other deer running and chasing in the water. I said, there's no way. So I shot to shoot this deer. And those little branches and everything, he was like in those little branches. Apparently what had happened, the bullet hit and fragmented, and he took off running. And he ran out past in front of my boy. And my boy was like so overwhelmed with what was happening. He was in awe. You know what I'm saying? I said, shoot him! I wanted him to shoot the one I had shot to kill him. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, the deer got away, and I ended up finding some sign and everything. I found some hair and stuff, but apparently I didn't hit him good enough, and I ended up losing the animal, and I hate that. I hate to lose an animal. I take it hard. It haunts me for a long time after I do it. But anyway, I said, man, you couldn't shoot that deer, but he almost couldn't talk because of the experience he was having of these animals coming out of the water from me kicking in the water and bleating and grunting and everything. And another time, we were in a cutover, and I had a lock on, and my youngest boy, he was in his teenage years. I would say he was 14 or 15 years old. He was a pretty good age to where he handled himself pretty good. So I said, get up in that lock on, and I said, I'm going to break branches and crack and kick and shuffle the leaves and make some noise. And I said, I'm going to bleat and grunt. I said, I might call up a good one on you. And I let him get set up. I didn't wait long. I started kicking, breaking branches and, tromping around it was a cypress tree, and it was pretty trashy where we were, but when you get up high, you could see good. You could see like over the broad thickets and everything. And then I started hearing that deer. So I'm like bleating and I'm grunting, and that deer's going across in the back of us like that. And I look, he's watching, boy, he starts aiming, Boy, and I'm hearing that deer, and it was coming for all of the bleating and the grunting and the thrashing and crashing I was doing, with the right time of the year. And boy, he's aiming, boy, he shot like that, I said, you got him? I don't know, wait, let me see, boy. He's looking in his scope, He said, I think I got him, Daddy. So he shot him. And so I said, well, let me go see if I can go get him. He was up in the lock on. So I start walking over there, and it was some briars, thick briars. And I'm going like that. I look back at him about 60 yards. I said, right here. Well, he motioned to me like further back, So I walked, man, about 70, 75 yards. I said, right here? No, further back, further back. So, man, I kept on walking. About 85, 90 yards, I stumbled on the deer. It was a spike with about some 3 or 4 inch spikes, a nice spike. But he shot that son of a gun. I'm telling you, he almost put that bullet in that buck. It's like it was thick briars, and he stuck his head up when I had made like a bleat, and he could see the head. He almost put it in that deer's eye. I mean, right underneath the eye. The head, the horns was all like twisted up, like it had cracked the skull. You know what I'm saying? But he shot that deer in the eye, almost in the eye, at about 85 yards. So unbelievable hunt. You could see he's up in that tree. He's like, man, he's looking around, and finally he spotted that deer. That is on the ground down there, kicking branches and bleating and grunting. So it works. You got to do it at the right times of the year. When they're rutting, and they're competing for those, it works, and it's going to work. My boys are older now. My oldest one don't hunt with me much. My youngest one, he still does, but now he's doing his own thing. He's become a really good hunter. He's had 3 good hunts last year. He killed some good bucks. One of them, I set him up on him. I had seen the deer like 2 weeks before, and I had seen him about 100, 110 yards, and I was shooting a different bullet, and he had stopped, and I had a good shot on him, but I didn't know how that bullet was going to shoot, so I didn't shoot him. And I went and I scouted. I found his rubs coming off the dry ridge into the 6-8 inches of water on the ridge, like I'm telling you. And I found his rub line, and like you could see his trail, and they usually make a rub line in that area. So I went back. I hunted it again. I call him a unicorn. He was a spike, but with one horn, and I'd seen a big black pig, but I said, I'm not shooting any of that because I knew it was a good deer. I could tell it was a good deer. So I went back about a week or so later, and he was with me. I paddled us in the canoe, and I went and I showed him. I said, look, I got a reflector on a cypress tree about 70 yards over there. I said, go to that reflector. I said, there's a broken cypress knee. I said, the top of it's broken. I said, you could step on that cypress knee, hang your climber on the bell of that cypress, and hop up in your climber. I said, you could climb that cypress tree. I said, that buck's trail is going to pass 20, 25 yards from that tree you're going to climb. About 8:45, I had set up on the other side of this lake, and I had one chasing a doe. It's like, it was just too trashy for me to see him. They passed just to where I couldn't get a shot. But about 8:45, boy, he shot. Pow! I said, man, I was all pumped up. I was excited because I knew it was a decent deer. And I hurried up and I climbed down. I paddled over there to him, and I got in the water, walking up to him, and then he starts drying up with my hip boots. I said, you got him? Yeah. So, boy, I got to him. I sent you the pictures of him. The one that was 5 on one side and the broken beam, he was like a 7-point, but he should have been a pretty good wide 10-point. Beautiful buck. But he said, Daddy, they come walking through. We call it like some pie grass. It's green. It almost looks like some young corn stalks growing in the bottom. They grow, and they're green. They start turning like a old June, the one who I told you said he got a big butthole. He's either a big buck or he got a big butthole. He called it some pie grass. I said, June, why you call that some pie grass? He said because he said it when it turns brown like that, he said it looks like pie, like a pie crust. You know what the color of a pie crust is? He said it looks like pie. Oh, he said, so I'll call it some pie grass. So now that's what we call. I don't know what kind of grass it is, but it's pie grass. And you'll find the deer's droppings. You'll find their trails. They like to eat it. But he said, Dad, it's kind of dry and crunchy. When you walking through it, you're going to make noise if you're not careful. He said, Dad, I was sitting down. He said, all of a sudden, he said, like that doe popped up almost like she popped out of the ground. She come out from behind a cypress tree. She materialized. He said, so I got ready. She was 30 yards right there. He said, she walked like that. And he said, I saw the movement. He said, all of a sudden, he said, I saw that son of a gun's beam when he come out from behind that cypress tree. He was letting that doe go, and he was just following behind that doe. Didn't have a care in the world or worry in the world. Bryce said when he stepped out from behind that cypress tree, he shot him, and he got him. So that's one that I had seen like 2 weeks before. I could have taken a shot, and I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't. And then when I paddled out of there, he went and he hit that lake, and he bedded up on a hill right on the side of that lake. And when I was paddling, he got up, and I jumped him, and that's when I saw his rack. I knew it was a good rack, but I couldn't tell he was broken on one side. And he went straight away. And I almost, if I could have stopped my canoe quick enough, I could have picked up my rifle and I could have shot him, but I'm glad I didn't, because a couple of weeks later, right after I had killed that nice 9-point I'm having mounted, I got to set up my youngest boy and let him kill him, and that means more to me. I was so choked up when I walked up on him and he had killed that buck, it didn't mean, it wouldn't have meant near to me if I would have killed him like him killing him. You know what I'm saying? Putting your son on something like that and letting your son get those experiences, there's no better feeling than that, than anything. I called up we used to have turkeys in the basin. We don't have that many anymore, but they had introduced them, and I called up some good turkeys for him over the years. And 9 years old, and the bird was roosted about 100 yards or so away, and I set him up, and I start yelping, and the bird was going across. I could hear him, so I turned my yelps. I start throwing my yelps this way. He comes in full strut, 25, 30 yards, strutting out in front of Bryce. Goes up to my Jake decoy, kind of turns to the Jake decoy, and, posturing at that Jake decoy, and I'm saying to myself, shoot him, you know what I mean? And he's 9 years old. He got a 9-inch beard, 3/4 inch spurs, a young bird. But he shot him, and he got him. And I was so choked up when I walked up. The bird was so close, the wad of the shell was past the bird, dead on the ground. The wad of the shell was right there. And he said, Daddy, he said, boy, they pretty when they get all fluffed up like they do. I said, oh, yeah, man, they pretty. Look, I could hardly talk, man. I had like a big knot in my throat, to call that bird up for your 9-year-old son. Unbelievable. Another time I called some up on him. They were on the roost, and I set up, and the hens were kind of over here, and the gobblers were gobbling. So I had set him up over here, and I couldn't see him. It was in those yellow flowers. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They grow kind of tall, and they make like a yellow flower. They almost look like a celery stalk. I forget what they call, but the swamp gets full of that sometimes, especially during the spring season of the turkey season. And they were tall. So I started calling, and them turkeys flew down, and there was more than one gobbler. They started coming to me, and I mean running. You know what I'm saying? So they're coming, and they're going past me. So I said, God, dog, and the hens were over here. So I said, man, I got to get them to turn around because Bryce is set up over here, my youngest boy. And he was still pretty, 10 or 12, a little year or two later after he killed that first one. So I turned my mouth toward him, and I start yelping, like throwing the yelps back toward him. Boy, you could tell they, and all of a sudden, I see them going through them yellow flowers. They're running, almost like racing with each other, trying to pass each other up, going to meet that hen. And boy, they get over there. He shot, bow! I said, oh. So I ran over there. So the first shot he had missed, and like they flew up, and he got him when he flew up. He got him on the second shot, So I got my boy to experience some unbelievable hunts and sharing things that I've learned with him. And now it's like he don't really want to hunt with me anymore. He enjoys hunting with me, but he enjoys going out on his own and experiencing his own successes by implementing what I taught him, the bleating, the finding the signs, you know what I mean, the knowing they like to go in the water,
So how do you, that brings up a great point. Like, how do you try to pass on your woodsmanship skills, which is really what we've talked about this whole episode of how you hunt deer? How do you pass along that woodsmanship skills to like your boys and like other, buddies like Gavin and some other young guys who are trying to do what, learn from you?
Right. Like I told you, like with my dad, he wasn't one who actually worded the teaching. I picked it up from being with him. But I'm a really good teacher. I'm a really good person to explain what I'm looking for, why I do this, I can, and I capture someone's attention when I make them understand. Like Bryce and Brennan, when I take them in the woods, you know what I mean? I would point out those tracks, you know what I'm saying? Those evident trails, like where the leaves are smashed down to the point where you could tell some animals are traveling right there. It's a travel corridor for them. Rubs, you know what I mean? Things that they're clipping, that they're eating, like those yellow flowers I was talking about. The deer like to eat that. You could see that celery stalk stem of that flower, that plant. A lot of times it's almost like they're broken, but that I've seen them clip them, and they're chewing that thing, that flower sticking out the side of their mouth, and I'm watching them chew them. So when I spot the different stuff that they're feeding on, I point that out to them. I said, that's some deer that's clipping it. I say clipping it. They're eating it, but I said they're clipping it. So you see how those grasses, like they cut short, look like somebody broke them? I said, that's that animal. He's grabbing them and cutting them with his teeth. And I point that all out to him. You know what I mean? Point out the hills. When we find those hills, and you could tell an animal's been bedding up on that hill. You could see where it's flattened out, and you could see like his hoof tracks. You know what I'm saying? From him climbing up on that hill and setting up. I said, you see right here? That's a buck. That might be a buck. You know, a lot of times you could tell it's a buck from the tracks. That I said, it's some deer that's coming bed up on those hills. You know, they're getting away from the pressure. They come and get in the water. They want to lay up on that hill and get away from the pressure. They go in the water. The water is an alarm for them. They hear anything coming in the water. A lot of times they think it might be another deer, but they can pinpoint that sound. They can start watching, and if they see it's not another deer, well, they can escape in the water. If it's a dog or a coyote that's trying to track them, that water's gonna conceal their scent. You know what I mean? So they can run in that water and get far enough away to where that animal that's just trying to track them or get on them don't stay right on them. They're safe in that water. They feel safe. You know what I mean? And that's why they like to go get in that water and set up on a hill, and they can hear if anything approaches them. You know, their nose lets them know a lot. You know what I mean? And they I teach them all that as they follow me and, follow me around in the woods. I teach them everything that I see, explain it to them.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. And one thing that you've mentioned a couple times is like these core areas, like these areas these bucks are using, like kind of these bedding areas and where they're laying down a lot of sign. Have you ever seen where multiple mature bucks are using the same core area?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like a lot of times, you kill a good buck, and you feel like, well, I killed that one. No, you hunt it again, and you end up you finding one just as good or even better, or a decent buck. They're animals of habit. You know what I mean? They try to duplicate their same pattern every day. If they're not getting in trouble, they're not in danger, they're going to keep doing the same thing. And the younger animals that's following them, following that doe or following that buck, it's like you following your daddy around learning from him. They end up usually traveling the same. Year after year, like I killed that buck quite a few years ago. I killed that one almost in the same spot. You know what I'm saying? And the one in the middle, the nice 8-point, I killed it almost in the same spot as those two. So that animal after animal, year after year, they continue in the same travel corridors or travel patterns or life patterns as the older deer before them. You know what I mean? And yeah, over the years, because I'm 55 now and I've been killing them since I'm a teenager, a lot of the same spots have produced good deer year after year after year, And a lot of my hunts, I almost got a good animal, but he smelled me and blew at me or spotted me in the tree like I talked about, the one that spotted me, but that's hunting same areas that those animals like to use, After doing it for so many years, you pattern them to where you know what they want to do. But they're going to pattern you too. If you throw your smell in their nose too many times, let them smell that you're in that area, let them hear that you're in that area, they pattern you. You know what I mean? It's just like when everybody's got their camera on that pile of rice bran on that corn. That animal's patterning you to bring in that feed there. You know what I mean? A lot of times you're going to go and you're going to drop that feed off 15, 20 minutes after you leave right there. If you got a camera, you catch that animal, he knows you just dropped off some feed, But he's not going to come when you're sitting there waiting for him to come. They pattern you,
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned earlier in the episode or early in this conversation, you don't use trail cameras.
No.
Like some of your boys might use them, or other friends might use them on other properties or other areas around, but you don't like to use them. Is there a certain aspect of not knowing exactly what that buck looks like that gets you excited just when you find his sign, and it makes it maybe bring some fun into the deer hunting because you don't truly know exactly what he looks like?
Exactly. The anticipation of not knowing exactly what that animal looks like, it makes me have more of an enjoyable experience if I finally take that animal and it's a really good animal. Don't get me wrong. I think trail cameras are a great tool, and you can use them to really pattern an animal. I know you can. I agree with anybody who feels that way, and I see guys use it on the different hunting shows and everything, and I know they work. But the animals that I hunt in those swamps, of Louisiana, you give him too much information that you're trying to kill him, you know what I mean? You're not going to kill him, So if I'm in and out trying to check that trail camera, I think that's a hunter's biggest mistake is when he's always going into that, checking that trail camera. Every time you go into that area, you're leaving that scent. You're leaving your scent behind. And if it's a good animal, he's going to come right there and he's going to smell. He's going to cross your path where you walked, and he's going to smell that you've been there. You educating him to the fact that you're in his area that you think you're going to kill him in that much more. So I'll find the sign of where that animal is, and I try to hunt on those key days. I like the moon. I watch moon phase. You know what I mean? I like peak hunting times according to moon phase. Like dead black night when there's no moon, that's peak animal activity. And full moon, peak animal activity. I watch. I got an app on my phone. It shows. It's a 6. I call it. I said today's a 6 deer day. It shows 6 white-tailed bucks. You know what I mean? That's the peak animal movement. You know what I mean? And it usually falls on a full moon or no moon. Now sometimes off of that you have like I call it a 3 deer day or a 4 deer day. Now sometimes you have like a 1 deer day, a 2 deer day. That's minimal animal activity. And that moon phase, look, for animal activity is dead on. We went to Tennessee one year, and I was telling my buddy about how I use that moon phase app. It's I forget what it's called, peak animal times or peak hunting times or something. I forget the app, but I have it on my phone. And we were in Tennessee, and we were in a cabin in the mountains. And I told Ricky, I said, we were going to Cades Cove. I said, we're going to see a lot of animal. I mean, the deer run around like crazy one thing. I said, we're going to see a lot of animal activity today. Rick, I said, it's a 6 deer day today. I told him, there was 6 little white-tailed deer on my app. And I forgot what the moon was. It was either no moon or full moon. I don't remember. Before we got out of the mountain and down on the road to go, where you start going back up in the mountain to go to Cades Cove, we saw a huge flock of turkeys. You know what I'm saying? We saw a big, beautiful coyote. He was on the edge of a tree line with like an open, like pasture type area. He almost looked like a wolf. And that morning sun was hitting him, coming above them mountains and was shining on him. We saw a big flock of geese, all flocked up in there. Just before we even got to the roads traveling to Cades Cove. We got to Cades Cove, we almost got run over with deer. You know what I mean? The bears. We saw a big boar bear, had a mama bear and a young one. Bunch of hazelnuts were falling like crazy. That's cool. I said, Rick, them squirrels are dropping them nuts like crazy out of that tree. Man, I mean, look, they were falling. So Ricky, he backed up. He started looking up at that tree. He said, squirrels. He said, that's a freaking bear up there. That mama bear was in that tree with that cub, and she was dropping them nuts out of that tree. That big boar, and I got pictures of him. I mean a big boar. He was on the bottom. He was eating all them nuts under that tree as she was dropping them out of that tree. She started climbing down that tree to come down, and it's like when she was climbing down, we're not far. We're 30 yards from him watching him, you know what I mean? It's like when she was coming down that tree, you could see she looked at that big boar like that son of a gun. He's eating all my nuts, She ran him off. She climbed down that tree and she ran him off. But it's just to show that moon phase and that 6 deer day, that peak animal activity, the animal was about to run over us in the wood that day. It's dead on. And don't get me wrong. Some days you're going to hunt. You can think, you're on a good day. It's going to happen. It don't happen. You know what I mean? But I pick those certain times when that animal, I feel he is the best time of the year, the day, or whatever, or moon phase, the wind's right. It's the best time for him to mess up. And I mean, look, sometimes it's picture perfect. You're gonna, you might have 3 or 4 unsuccessful hunts. They say unsuccessful hunts you don't kill. You don't kill what you want. But then that 5th hunt, it's all gonna come together. You know what I mean? And the whole time in those unsuccessful outings, you're educating and you're learning more of that area and what them animals are doing, and finally it all comes together.
How important is it for, especially someone new getting started in the deer hunting, they're trying to build that woodsmanship skills, just spend as much time as possible in the field and just constantly learn?
It's the utmost importance, because the more you out in the woods and you're looking and figuring out what those animals are doing by finding their feed, finding their travel routes, you know what I'm saying, their trails they're leaving behind, rubs, the droppings, whatever. The more you're out in the woods figuring out what that animal is doing, it's in its habitat, it's in its environment, you're going to learn how to position yourself in the right spot to end up seeing that animal or seeing what's in there, It's the utmost importance, and I still, get me wrong. Sometimes even a blind hog finds an acorn, like they say, you can wander off into the woods. And I've heard numerous stories like that, and I've even done it sometimes, In the blind, you're not even sure what you're going to see. You go set up, and you make the most unbelievable hunt that you ever heard of. You hear people doing it all the time. There's those certain times when that happens, but to be successful, you need to be in the woods studying what's going on out there. Yeah, getting in that environment and figuring out what those animals are doing.
One thing that I've been curious, especially a guy like yourself who lives down here, hunts southern Louisiana in these swamps, in these big bottoms, how do pigs or hogs affect deer movement, or do they affect deer movement at all for you?
The pigs, as far as the guys who hunt the feed, the pigs have almost ruined your ability of getting good deer on feed, because deer don't like to feed with pigs. You know what I'm saying? I know from my experience of everybody doing it, and I don't put feed out a lot. I've put feed out for my boys as they were younger. You know what I mean? And I have 2 granddaughters. They're getting to the point to where I'm probably going to end up soon start taking them hunt. I might put a little feed out for them, because it's always good to give a kid some kind of an edge, an advantage. And if they kill their first deer and it's a doe, hey, it's an unbelievable experience for them. So I try to give them some kind of an edge with feed. But I don't hunt with feed. But those pigs, they always slop it up and tromp it up in that pile of feed that you're leaving behind for them, But yeah, now I've seen pigs in areas that I'm hunting trying to kill a good deer. A pig gonna try to get away from hunting pressure the same way as like a deer will, and they love the swamp bottoms. They love to get in that mud. There's different grasses and roots that grow. I mean, they tromp up and plow up a swamp like a swamp bottom that's just starting to dry out, but it's still real moist and everything. Man, when a herd of pigs or a bunch of pigs get in that, I mean, it looks like a freshly plowed field. It's unbelievable. Like on the edges of these sloughs and stuff, when these sloughs start drying out, I don't know if it's roots from the trees or roots from certain grasses that they like to eat, but I mean, it looks like you could just go and plant stuff all along that whole bank of that slough as it's drying out, but it's still damp and moist. And you find the wallers. I mean, they waller and they lay up in that mud. You can see where they've been laying up in that mud. They want to get that mud on them and everything, probably to protect them from the mosquitoes and everything else, But, yeah, where I kill my good deer, I mean, a pig, you may happen to see a pig here and there, but mainly when I kill my good deer in the swamp, I don't see a lot of pigs. A good deer doesn't like to be around a pig, They just don't like it.
To the point where if you start seeing a bunch of pig sign where you've been hunting, does that kind of make you want to move and relocate?
To the point to where they come in a lot, but like I'm telling you, I don't hunt feed. You know what I mean? I try to hunt their travel corridors, and I try to hunt their areas they're trying to go to get away from pressure. So a lot of times the pigs, if I see the pig sign, they're usually just moving through. Those pigs are going to continue come into an area because it's something that they like right there. Whether it's the mud or whether it's certain roots that's in that area or grasses that they eat in the roots of it or whatever. Because I mean, they eat pig. Sometimes it looks like their guts is total mud. When like you bust a gut in a pig, I don't know if they eat mud too. You know what I mean? It's like you don't see any vegetation in it. You know what I mean? They're rooting all the time. I guess any root or whatever, they swallow the mud and the root and everything. But yeah, usually the pigs don't mess me up the way I hunt. They'll come through an area and you see they pass through that area, but I don't see them a lot when I'm hunting the bottoms. Now, when I hunt the briars, those pigs will lay up in those briars all day long, and in the evening they're gonna start coming out of those briars to try to go to where they're feeding at. I made a hunt one day. I had 5 bullets with me, and it was real windy. And I climbed a cypress about 35, 40 feet up. I climbed up, and there was big, tall briar thickets all around the area that I was in, to where, I could see over the top of those briars, or I could see in those briars if a buck or a deer would have been moving around in there. But late in the afternoon, well, no, it wasn't actually that late in the afternoon. It was during the day. I started hearing some grunting, and man, those pigs started coming out. 2 big sows and a bunch of little ones about that tall. And they come out of that briar thicket, but it was real windy. And it was one of them sows was a pretty healthy looking sow. So I'm going to shoot that one. And then it came, she crossed it's like a dry slough. She come out of those briars and she crossed that dry slough. And she turned a certain way. I shot her right in the back of the ear, dropped her in the tracks. That other sow and all them little piglets, about 10 or 11 of them, they all took off and they ran back in the briars. Wasn't no time at all. Here they come again. I said, well, I'm going to shoot that other one, another nice sow. I shot that other nice sow right in the head. Boom, killer, dropped her right there. And it was real windy, so they couldn't really tell where the direction. And all them young ones, they went back in that briar thicket. But after a while, they came out. If I'd have had enough bullets, I could have probably killed it. And those little young pigs, that's some of the best eating ones they got. They're real tender. I mean, they're really good eating. But I only had 3 bullets left. So I didn't want to just go off to start shooting them young ones, you know what I mean? And I had 2 nice sows, which would have been some good eating. So that's good. So it went on through the day. That was early. It was probably about, 1:20 in the afternoon. I had set up probably about 1 o'clock. I wasn't set up that long when those pigs came out. After a while, I heard some noise like that. I looked. I saw something moving through the woods kind of big. I thought, boy, it might be a buck. But then I noticed it looked like a pig. It was a big boar. He hit a trail that they use, and that trail came right to that tree that I was in. And when he was coming, I said, man, that's a big boar. I said, I'm going to shoot that son of a gun. 15 yards when he walked out from behind that cypress tree, man, I busted him in the head, dropped him right there in his tracks. So I had 2 sows, and I had that big boar. 2 bullets left. I only brought 5 bullets with me, and I knew it was a good wind like it was. It was a good day to kill a good buck, and I knew they probably didn't know where that sound was coming from because it was so windy. Wasn't too much later, about 20, 30 minutes later, I spotted another one coming, another boar. Came, he was on the same trailer that big boar was on. And when he got about 15 yards from that big dead boar on the ground, he stopped. Like, he saw, bow, I shot him in the head. I killed him too. So I killed 2 sows and a boar about 250, 300 pounds, and another boar about 150 pounds. And after every once in a while, them young ones would come out again. I could have killed one of them young ones, but I had 1 bullet left, and it was still early. I said, man. After a while, that buck might come out. I got to make sure I got a bullet to shoot that buck because I went to try to make me a good deer hunt, kill me a good buck. So I ended up not killing a good buck, but I had 2 sows and those 2 boars. Hauled all that out. I had that all in my boat. I posted a post on Facebook. I said, I went this afternoon to try to make me a buck hunt. I said, it looked like I ended up making a pig hunt. I had my boat full of pigs. Man, I had 2 sows and 2 big boars that I killed. It's like I was a sniper 35 feet up in that cypress tree. Like, boom, I was busting them in the head. Boom. So I had a good time, I gave 1 to my buddy. I gave 1 to another guy, and I kept on. I gave wild pig to everybody.
That's what I call diversifying the freezer a little bit.
That's right.
Now, we're almost out of time, but I have to ask this question. What is your favorite way to cook deer meat?
I love fried backstrap. When I kill my first one, I always take the backstrap, and what I do with them, I season them up. I cut them like in some little small steaks, and I season up real good. Garlic powder, salt, cayenne pepper, and I'll make an egg milk batter, and flour. I'll dip them in that egg milk batter. You can kind of season your egg milk a little bit. You could even kind of season your flour because I like them well seasoned, and I put them in that flour, and I like to deep fry that. You can eat them we will fry like mushrooms for like appetizers while we're frying the backstrap and French fries or whatever. I really love that. I don't know if it's my favorite way. One of the best suppers we usually always have at the camp is somebody kills a good deer. You go and you debone some of that good fresh meat, either the backstrap or the hindquarter or whatever. You cut it like in some small chunks, a little like kind of like steaks like, but you season it up real good. And we like to cook in a black iron pot. Cajuns, and if you're a Cajun, you got a black iron pot. You know what I'm saying? But you get your grease pretty good and hot, and you cut you some onions, you cut you some bell peppers, you can cut you some celery too. I don't use celery all the time, but sometimes I do. But you take that deer meat and you put it in just a pretty good skim of grease in your black iron pot, and you brown it real good. You got to watch your fire, as your bottom of your pot and that meat wants to stick to that bottom of a pot, you kind of lower your fire a little bit for it not to scorch or get a burnt taste. You got to watch not to burn. But I brown it real good. I take my meat out of my pot and then I'll put those onions and those bell peppers and that celery or whatever. I'll put that in that browned up meat that sticks all in the bottom of that pot, and you just you cook them onions down. You saute them. Where they want to start kind of clarifying a little bit. They want to break up. It's almost like you could take that and put that on a slice of bread. You know what I mean? And you can make a meal with just that. That's how good it is if you would want to eat it. Just browned up onions and that browned up seasoned deer meat. But when you get those onions browned up and broken down real good, you add that brown meat that brown deer meat, you add it back in those onions, and you add enough water to about the top of the meat, and you just let it tenderize, and it makes a beautiful brown onion gravy, onion bell pepper gravy, well seasoned, and it's almost like you got to ball it in that black pot, but you don't put so much water to where it makes your gravy watery, you know what I mean? But your water's going to boil down, you add a little water. And we like to say when we had the camp, we put it on drink. You know what I mean? You put it on low, and you just let it cook low and slow. You add a little water and stir it every once in a while, and you drink your little toddy, or you drink your cold beer, you know what I'm saying? And you play bourrée, or you shoot the bull, I don't tell lies, but some of them tell some lies, you know what I'm saying? But tell some hunting stories, and you got that cooking. And then I like to smother me some potatoes with that. I'll do the same thing with the potatoes. I'll season them up real good. I'll put a little onions in them too. But you brown them up real good. I get them to where they're almost like scorched, but not burnt. And when I get them like that with the onions and everything, and I like to put some smoked sausage, I'll mix that smoked sausage, let that smoked sausage kind of brown up in them potatoes, and you add enough water to about the top of the potatoes. And when it starts boiling, you turn it on low, on like simmer, and you cover it. And you just let them simmer until they make like a potato sauce. Like, you know what I'm saying? That potato kind of breaks down, and you got them chunky, but you have it's almost like a potato gravy almost, but it's thick, That on some white Evangeline made bread. I don't know if y'all got Evangeline made bread in Alabama, but a slice of Evangeline made bread with some good old smothered potatoes on there, man, you can't beat it. While you're drinking your beer, your cold beer, and your deer meat's cooking, you test your potatoes out on a good slice of white Evangeline made bread. But smothered deer meat in a brown onion gravy with some good smothered potatoes on the side, that's hard to beat during the hunting season you talk about. That's a meal of a king right there, especially after a hard deer. Backing through the swamp with your climber on your back, trying to get on that big buck, trying to get away from that pressure. You know what I mean?
Oh, dude, I'm hungry now.
Oh, yeah.
How do you know it's done? How do you know the deer meat's done? Just whenever the gravy's the consistency you want?
When you take your spoon that you stir in your pot with, when you take your spoon and you try to just smash into or cut into that deer meat with that spoon, and it slices it like a knife. You know what I mean? That the side of that spoon just you can make sure the rice is cooked.
Ooh, buddy. Yeah. I know what I'm doing the first doe I shoot this year.
I've got one last thing I want to ask, because I'm always going to call you a waterman, because what I mean by that is you're not driving to your stand or anything like that.
No.
It's taken by boat, and then you're having to go in from there. Do you have any wild boat stories? I don't know, getting lost in the swamp or anything crazy happen just because you've been in a boat so much your whole entire life?
There's an area with my gator tail. When you come off the channel, there's a little slough. It meanders, and it's got some pretty hard turns in it. And your gator tail, you can run in 6-8 inches of water, even shallower than that. You know what I'm saying? Once you get it up on step, the prop can be halfway in the water, and it's going to run. But anyway, I was going off into an area to make a hunt one time, and it's like it was sanded up. The slough was kind of like sanded up. And when I'm coming to a pretty good speed, I want to get there early enough to set up before daylight, before that animal's coming into the area. I don't want no sound. I don't want no scent. I want to be up in my tree half hour, 45 minutes or so before that animal's on the move. You know what I'm saying? So, boy, I'm coming at a pretty good speed. And when I make that first curve, my boat tends to slide a lot. When I turn, it's like a curve, then a curve. When I turn to try to make that next curve, my boat took off the slide, and it was almost like a sandbar on the side of that slough. That son of a gun, high and dry, docked on that sandbar, when your boat gets on the sand, that sand sticks to the bottom of the aluminum, and you talk about hard. Look, I tried pushing it. I mean, I was totally dry docked. The water was right there, but I couldn't. I said, man, now what am I going to do? Luckily, I had my cane knife in my boat, and I took my cane knife, and they had some sycamore trees about that big around. So, man, I cut that sycamore tree down, and I made me like a big pry pole, and I had to stick it, like jam it in that sand and kind of get it wedged under the edge of my boat. And I had to lift and pry. And I was able to pry that boat off that sandbar and make it in time to go ahead and make my hunt. I didn't kill that morning, but I had a little hiccup happen trying to get in there early in the morning. With your light on your head, you know what I'm saying? You're running with a light on your head, and you're used to running these places quite a bit, but, you know, sometimes you end up getting in a bind. But I had some time with a tree would have fallen across the sluice one time, like, you know what I mean? And whatever, the wind blew it down or whatever. And you come in at a pretty good speed in the morning, and all of a sudden that tree's there, and you can see it's not going to stop you completely. And you jump that son of a gun. You got to hold on and brace yourself because your boat almost comes out airborne, you know what I mean? Oh, if I had videos of filming me traveling from the boat launch into those areas, I mean, it keep people on the edge of their seat. You know what I mean? It's all part of the adventure. You know what I mean? Not many people can do that. You know, I grew up in that swamp. I run that swamp a lot, night, day. You know, frog at night. Go all over that swamp. You know, I recognize the places. I know how to go. I know how to come back. Not many people are capable of doing that. And being able to do that by growing up the way that I grew up has enabled me to get on some unbelievable experiences, you know.
As wrapping up here, if to educate people who aren't familiar with the culture down here when it comes to not just hunting, but just anything have to do with the outdoors, you know, just spending time outside and living off the land a little bit, how would you describe that to people who's never experienced it or never met anybody from down here?
Well, let me tell y'all something about the Cajun people. Whether it's you crawfishing or fishing or hunting or whatever it is, that's one thing about the Cajun people. They love to get together. It's like everybody's family. You know what I'm saying? So let's say you went out and you made that enjoyable deer hunt, and you got that wonderful venison, that great deer meat that you can cook, or a frogging hunt, you know what I'm saying, a fishing, a crawfish or whatever, to have a crawfish ball. It's like everybody gets together. It's like a festive time. It's like a celebration of who we are and what we're about, being able to go out and get that food supply for us. You know what I'm saying? And when you have that big cookout and you have everybody over, it's like all family, and you're telling those stories, and it's like a celebration. You know, you're laughing, you're drinking a cold beer or cold beverage or whatever, and you're enjoying, you know, hearing the stories of how you killed those ducks or how you killed that deer. You know what I mean? So our way of life, when we get together to eat, it's like a celebration of how we went out and we harvested all of the great things that we go out and harvest, like in the wilds of Louisiana and in the swamps of the Atchafalaya Basin, the swamps of Louisiana. I mean, squirrels, ducks, deer, rabbits, crawfish, frogs, fish. You know what I'm saying? When you get into the Atchafalaya Basin, you're surrounded by delicacies. That is some of the best stuff that you can eat in the whole world. And what makes it so much better is all of the cultural aspect of it. That is something that you're doing that your ancestors and your forefathers, your mothers and your grandfathers and your grandmothers have done and celebrated for 100 years or more, 150 years, and you continuing to participate in those same traditional and cultural way of life. You know what I mean? So it's like a big celebration, when you get together and you're cooking that wonderful deer meat or the frogs or the squirrels or whatever, and you tell those stories, and it's like, it's no better time and no better people than to spend it doing it with. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Jody, listen, I'll say this. We both greatly appreciate you letting us come down here to your home and do this interview and sit down with you and share some stories, and also just some of the different experiences you've had that's helped you become a successful hunter, but also be able to share that with a wide range of audiences. Because there'll be people that listen and watch this that don't live within 500 miles of us, and they're going to find
don't live
it
within
interesting.
1,000 miles.
Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting to get some feedback on it, but I greatly appreciate you letting us come down here and do this episode with
I'm glad y'all came, and my hope was, I'm getting older now. I'm 55 years old, and, if you'd asked me to do this when I was 35, I was still pretty bad boy at 35, you know what I'm saying? And I probably wanted to protect what I do and what I'm on. I don't know if I'd agree to do it, but now I want to be able to pass that on to those younger guys, because, as human beings, we're supposed to pass on our knowledge to others so that they can be successful or do better than what we have done in the past. You know what I'm saying? So if I can give somebody a tip according to my experiences to make them better and make them accomplish or experience some of the accomplishments that I've been able to do, then that's what it's all about. So I appreciate y'all coming. I'm glad y'all did, and I hope everybody enjoys our segment,
Absolutely. Well, Jody, thank you again. Listeners out there, viewers out there, if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with some friends. If you're on YouTube watching us, leave us some comments down below what you thought about this episode or maybe potentially episodes with Jody and just the overall feedback y'all have. So appreciate y'all watching the podcast. Appreciate you also listening to the podcast, and we'll catch you back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.